7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. I am going to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's June 22nd, 2022. We're in the Aldermatic Chamber and via Zoom. The meeting link can be found on the agenda. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire.
I'm here.
Alderman John Sullivan is recorded as absence with the proper excuse. Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I am here and I did not golf today.
Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
Alderman John Cathy.
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien is present. And our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present.
Also in attendance, we have Alderman Timmons.
Here.
And Alderman Como and Alderman Clee. And I do not see any other aldermen on TV, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and the mayor's here.
And also in attendance is His Honor the Mayor, Jim Donches.
Can I do a point of order? I don't see Alderwoman Shoshana on the endorsers. Is she part of the endorsers? Yes. On the agenda.
Alderwoman Kelly, yeah, is part of this committee.
Okay. So
Yes.
she's not on the list. That's
Oh, okay, that may have been a typo, but she is a member of this committee.
okay.
And CFO John Griffin is with us as well.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have,
Okay, first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to make public comment? I see no one in, there was one person in the chamber.
That's not in here.
Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I don't see anyone for public comments, so that'll be none. Communications?
Bless you.
there are none.
So, this is the wrap-up session. I don't know why that's on there. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions,
There are none.
new business ordinances.
There is none.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to take from the table R-22035, which is relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget for the city of Nashua, general enterprise, special revenue, and grant funds.
Okay, the motion on the table is to take R-22035 from the table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, tonight is the wrap-up session, especially for people that are new. This is the actions that we will take before we send it to the full board. Any changes that we make via motions this evening are recommendations to the full board for the action on the final agenda. So, I think without further ado, I'm going to ask Alderman O'Brien, I think you have a...
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would like to make a motion to subtract $25,000 on page 215, account number 89, line number 89782, which is downtown improvement, ETF, and add that $25K from that account to account number 56, outside agencies, line 56221, which is the Great American Downtown. And may I speak to that motion?
Yes.
It seems that inadvertently, the Great American Downtown in previous budgets was up to $50,000. Inadvertently, they were cut back to $25,000. This will make them whole. In communication with the Great American Downtown to add that $25,000, we did get, which is the Downtown Improvement Committee. They are in agreement. We'll take $25,000 from there, place it into the Great American Downtown. So it's basically just swapping. I don't see any real true increase to the budget where this is coming under one approved account.
Right, it's a zero to wash.
Going over, so it's more of a wash. And if I can advocate for the Great American Downtown, those of you that like the Christmas stroll and the other good things, the farmers market and the like, this will assist them in those endeavors. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? Questions? Alderman Jetty?
Yeah, so
I was planning on making a motion, the source of the transfer, taking 25,000 from the Downtown Improvement Committee. So during one of our meetings, Mr. Griffin acknowledged that the 100,000 that is listed on that line item for Downtown Improvement Committee was an error. That 100,000, we voted last year to allocate 100,000 to Downtown Improvement Committee as a one-time event. And so the 100,000 that appears there was a mistake, he said. And so I was gonna move to remove that 100,000 completely. So I don't mind taking 25,000 from it, but I'm you know, it's really not money that's supposed to be there to begin with.
We can bring Mr. Griffin up, but technically it's in the budget, being considered until another action is taken, but Mr. Griffin? Which is probably why the Downtown Improvements Committee doesn't have a problem with it. Mayor, do you want to come up, or?
Well, I'm just here if anybody has any questions. You may not have any questions for me at the moment, but if you do, I can answer them now. But otherwise, I need to leave.
Does anybody have a question for the mayor relative to the budget before we move on? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so the, you know, this is your budget, so the 25,000 that you did not put in, for Great American Downtown, what's your feeling about adding 25,000 to Great American Downtown?
Well, we have given them 50,000 in the past. I mean, we'd understood that some of that money was going to the concerts, but having met with them, you know, they were adversely affected by COVID. Their income over those 2 years was reduced because of lower income. So, I mean, I wouldn't argue against, I'm not arguing against restoring that money if the budget committee, the board thinks that that is worthwhile.
Okay, thank you.
I had Alderman Kathy first.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, did you happen to see Mr. Cummings' communication this afternoon regarding this particular issue and why the monies were allocated the way that they were?
I didn't see it, but I think he was saying that we had put money in prior years for these concerts.
Yeah, and then he seemed to intimate that because he felt like there was a plan coming from GAD down the line, that he would wait, or we would wait until we heard that plan, and then we could do escrows. Do you have an opinion about how you feel about that? If that's something that you'd be okay to, or you prefer do it now?
I think it could go either way.
Okay. All right.
Alderman Kelly? Oh, I had Alderman O'Brien first. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to give you some additional information. Prior to my getting elected on the Board of Aldermen, I was on the National Fire Rescue, and I was the liaison to the Great American Downtown. And very important position because of the holiday stroll. We have over 100,000 people that we anticipated coming into Nashua. It's a great asset to our downtown community. It's great for the families. A lot of families, they enjoy some of that fried dough, which I cannot eat anymore. But it's good fun. There's the Christmas tree lighting and everything else like that. So there's a new director that came to GAT just recently. Paul Shea, as you know, is now a commissioner on Public Works. Last year, he worked with a $50,000 budget. This got cut inadvertently for whatever reason to $25,000. That's half. That's very traumatic. And with a new director coming in, having a cut at that magnitude, I don't think anybody here, if they were the CEO of that, an organization as such, could really come in new and part of the learning curve and operate like that. So what this does, this is not in addition. It basically level funds. And those of you that have been on budget in the past, level funding doesn't actually mean level funding because it doesn't keep up with inflation or anything else like that. So to keep it as in the previous year, $50,000, again, I have to advocate, I don't think it's too much to ask. I think about the 100,000 people that come into Nashua, spend money in Nashua, working in such things, the farmers market that people attend to. This is a worthwhile project, and to help this brand new director to achieve these objectives, I think this is money well spent. And this notice, not allocating, transfer. Thank you.
Any, Alderman Kelly?
Can
Oh,
I
yes.
just intervene here? I apologize for this, but I can't really stay very long, so if you have other questions, would it be okay to address those to me now? Or you may
Anybody
not have any,
another
which is,
question for the mayor?
Non-related.
and you can always get in touch with me, call
Yeah.
me, or come,
All right.
have me come to your next meeting, whatever you want.
Okay.
But, anyway, you all have worked very hard on this. Thank you for your efforts. You know, it's not an easy job making these decisions, balancing between the needs and the tax rate, so I'm sure people really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
All right?
Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. I'm going to support this. I think that Alderman O'Brien said a lot of what I was going to say. GAD has done a great amount of work for the city, and I've seen it grow since I lived downtown when I first moved here to now. And this new director needs to have the support to continue to do that and grow whatever she envisions it to happen. But it's been really critical to the downtown business owners. I talk to them all the time. We've just brought in so many people to our city through a lot of the stuff that GAD has been doing.
Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question to Mr. Griffin or anyone else who's been at all these meetings. In my notes here, to Alderman Jetty's point, I do have the 100,000 not in that capital improvements anymore because it was in error. So could Mr. Griffin speak to whether or not that's actually an allocated line item or there was a misprint or whatever the case may be before we move ahead?
Certainly, if I may, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes, during my Budget Review Committee session with you folks, I recognized after listening to the previous meeting that the 100,000, I believe Chairman Dowd indicated that was a one-time deal. And I looked at the resolution, it's a one-time deal. I reached out to Alderman Clemmons, and he told me he wasn't planning on doing anything for fiscal '23. So Alderman Jetty is correct that that 100,000 can be reduced. If it isn't reduced, then it's just going to lapse the surplus because there'll be no transfer. The motion by Alderman O'Brien makes sense to me, increasing taking the 25,000 from that number, leaving a balance of 75,000, and then there could be a motion to just basically reduce it to zero.
Clarifying question, if I may? Thank you.
Aaron?
So what you're saying is that notation in the meeting, in the prior meetings was just to notate that it was a one-time deal, and so it wasn't necessarily a necessity or anything that had been planned, but the money is available in that particular way, and we can move it around how we want. I was taking it as that money was not available, and so really it should be zero, and then we don't have 100,000 to move around, but you're saying we do have 100,000 to move around as we please.
Just for the new people, when you get this book, that's the budget from the mayor. And unless the Board of Aldermen take a motion to change an item in this book, it's there.
I understand that, Mr. Chair. My confusion was in that meeting when I took the notes, I thought it was saying, hey, we didn't mean to put this 100,000 here because it's not there. But what he was saying was it's a one-time thing. So I got confused. So I just needed the clarification. I appreciate it.
And it's there until we make a motion to
Right.
remove it.
Okay.
So any other, Alderman Cleen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really wasn't planning on speaking, but the head of the downtown improvement is one of my constituents, and she did reach out to me to say that they haven't been talked to about the money. So I just want to clarify that as far as the downtown improvement committee. But I want to add to my advocation of that. I think that you should be putting the $25,000 back to GAD, and the reason for it is this. I spoke to the previous director of GAD, Paul Shea, to get a little history, to find out exactly how their budget was. When their budget started, they started with $50,000. I'm not sure, I think he said it was 2003 or something of that nature. As they moved on, at one point, they were reduced to $35,000. Then in 2011, it was brought back up to $50,000. They've never had anything below $35,000. And when you think of, as I think it was pointed out, inflation, they started way from day one with $50,000. For a short period of time, I think it was like 4 years, they were down to $35,000. And then they were put back up to $50,000. I think we're doing a disservice to GAD. We put a new employee in there who has no other staff with her at the moment. I know she was meeting tomorrow with the board of directors and so on. We're putting them behind the 8 ball by cutting them even by $25,000 and saying to them, make it a success. Even without the concerts were not costing $25,000. They weren't just doing that for the $25,000 when you consider they've never been below $35,000. So I think you're right to give them the $25,000 back. But I do want to just say that Ms. Blaisdell did send me a comment that she said that they've never discussed this and she's not sure how her committee would be in favor of it, but I think she's misunderstanding when we're saying we're taking this money from downtown improvement. I don't think she quite understood that it was this transfer, so, but I did promise that I would put that out there, so.
By the way, I did have communication with the chairman of the board of directors of GAD, and they said that they don't think they can survive without the 25,000. So, any other conversations or questions? Alderman Wiltshire?
I agree with adding the money back, and I will be supporting this.
Okay, so motion on the floor is as read by Alderman O'Brien. I know what the motion is.
Okay.
Is to take money from the downtown improvements ETF, which is currently in the budget at $100,000, taking $25,000 out of that account and returning $25,000 to take the GAD budget from 25 to 50. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay. I have, since Alderman Como isn't on the budget committee, I have a motion that he would like considered, and he will talk to it. The motion by Alderman Como is to add on page 307, line number 17, Fund 7058, Park Rehabilitation Fund, the amount of $275,000. Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Excuse me?
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Clerk?
Yes.
It's right there, repeat the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was busy reading to try to
I was like
transcribe
waiting
it.
for 5 sentences. and you
Yes,
stopped.
excuse me. I can only multitask, I can't evidently. Motion by Alderman Como to add on page 307, line number 17, Fund 7058, Park Rehabilitation Fund, the amount of $275,000.
Alderman Como?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this has been something that I've been working on for a while with the support, I believe, of the Department of Public Works and Parks and Recreation. There is an athletic field on the grounds of Fairgrounds Middle School, the Bean Field. It is a lit field. The city uses that. They permit the field out to rec leagues, adult leagues, things like that. They generate revenue from the field. The lighting system has fallen into severe disrepair. This is something that's been a concern for several years. It started with just the basic condition of the lights. A lot of the bulbs were burning out. They were The frame that they are attached to is wood. It was warping and twisting due to the weather and sun and things like that. Just recently, a crew from Parks and Rec came out to replace some of the bulbs. And while they were up in the bucket truck, they found that the infrastructure that the electronics were attached to is falling into even worse disrepair, to the point where one of the technicians came back down and said he had stopped trying to loosen the hardware because he thought that the whole thing was going to break and come down. So I've spoken with DPW and Parks. We talked about a couple of different options, ranging from just rehabbing some of the poles and the hardware to a rebuild of the system. And we all kind of agree that it has outlived its life expectancy. And they gave me this figure of $275,000 to completely rebuild the system, which I think we all agreed was necessary, and they support this and are willing to do the work later in this year if we can allocate the funds. It does sound like, if I understand correctly, that there might now be $75,000 from the Downtown Improvement Committee that we could transfer over here, so then we'd only be looking for an additional 200. But the total is $275,000. And it's important to note that not only is it for the quality of using the fields, but it's a safety hazard. We're concerned that some of that stuff is going to come down, and it's adjacent to the Legacy Playground, which is a differently abled accessible playground. There's kids that play there, and I'm horrified to think that one of these poles might come down while there's kids on the playground. So that's why we're looking for $275,000 to rebuild this lighting system later this year.
Alderman Wiltshire?
Thank you. I support fixing the lights. I'm just wondering, if they're generating revenue there, where is that revenue going? Maybe Mr. Griffin can tell me that, and how much revenue they're generating.
Mr. Griffin?
It's not, Mr. Chairman and members, it's not part of the towers. So my suspicion is it's in the Park Rec Department through their programming.
Yeah, I think it's Director Photo and the Park Rec at another meeting reached out to me and said that it is definitely a safety item, that they at least would need money to remove the lighting if they had to, because it is a danger to even just have it sitting there and never mind using it. And if they're playing a game, several times the lights have gone out in the middle of the, people are pitching and catching, hard balls. That's kind of dangerous. So they recommended that it be completely replaced. And any revenues that appear would be from the rental of the field that would appear in the revenues for the Park Rec Department. And if they don't have the lights, they will lose the revenue from any night Alderman Bryan?
I'm going to advocate for this. Strong supporter of athletics, but the thing is, you need lights to play. If it's a safety hazard, I'm fine. But also, I come from Ward 9, and I advocate for my ward, much like anybody else advocates for their own particular ward. Ward 9 has St. Andrew's Field that hasn't been touched in eons. Hasn't been touched when these poles were probably planted. I have been through probably about four. It goes back to Mr. Nick Casiano, if I'm saying his name correctly. Casiano, when he was the director of, the Parks Department. And at that particular time, oh yeah, you're next on the list. And if you heard this before, and I don't want to sound like a broken record on it. So therefore, how can I support one thing and yet try to advocate for another? If Alderman Como, thank you, if Alderman Como would like to amend his motion to an even number of 300,000, maybe.
Point of order. There is legislation coming to us at the next meeting that has been generated by Director
Cummings.
Yes.
To fund that park. It's coming out of monies that were generated by a project that happened in Nashua that had to give us some money, and they won't allocate it to that park. So I don't think we need to.
Right, but unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'll be content to sit here and be quiet on the matter, but I'm not, because it's got to be at the whim of other aldermen who are sitting here. This could be another, how do you do to Ward 9? Because this money that, you are absolutely correct that you're saying that does exist. It has no earmark. So we're gonna have to come before this board to earmark that particular money to make sure that goes to the St. Andrews Fund. And I'll sit on my hands if I have I'm not asking for the vote or anything, Mr. Chairman, but if we have a mutual understanding that maybe, we can wait till that legislation comes in, and if it comes in with the support of the board, then I'll withdraw that.
And it will be allocated on this year's funds, not the FY23 budget, so it will probably happen faster that way.
I think I proved my point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. So, the motion is still on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
it's a little bit of the mechanics. We're gonna need, if we wanna put the money in, we need to transfer it in. So we need to do it on that page that we just talked about with transferring from, with reducing the transfer to downtown improvements. We need to create a transfer into this particular expendable trust fund.
I wrote it as such. Can I show it to you to see if is that what you're talking about?
Well, this particular 275,
Oh, the 275.
we're trying to get that needs to be part of the budget. Other than doing a transfer, there's no other way of getting it into that park rehabilitation.
Okay.
And the one final thing we're dealing with, and we dealt with the pending St. Andrews, is I need to just look at my email to see if that's one of the 11 parks that is eligible for the money, and it's Fairgrounds. Is that the park?
The park is located at Fairgrounds Middle School,
Okay.
so I'm not sure if that,
Is it
Makes it
referred to
eligible.
as Fairgrounds? But I can look it up, just to make sure you can put it in something.
Alderman O'Brien is St. Andrews.
Correct.
Yeah,
So one of the things we did when we worked on the St. Andrews, I don't know if this is even on, maybe, but one of the things we made sure is when you put it into that expendable trust fund, that's eligible to be spent on the parks. For some reason, years ago, when they created that, they limited it to 11 parks. So I just want to do that one final check.
I'm hoping, if, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I did talk to legal, and I think there's pending legislation and working with other members, Director Cummings on this particular, and hopefully that legal will come out with that information. But I'll take that under advisement and make sure that it does, Mr. Griffin.
Are we talking about St. Andrews? Or are we
St.
talking about-
Andrews, he's talking about St. Andrews.
All right, so what needs to happen to the motion to make it as affected by Alderman Como's?
So right now, I'm trying to make sure that it's one of the eligible parks
Fairgrounds?
to expend money from that park rehabilitation expendable trust fund. That's our preference, to put it in there, because it doesn't lapse, and if the plan exceeds a fiscal year, you don't lose the funding, so I'm hoping to get a,
I know that,
so what I'm getting from my controller is, St. Andrews is good, I already checked that, that's named in the
I'm just
legislation.
advocating.
That's good. Now I'm trying to make sure Fairgrounds, and we're struggling with the name of the park is, so I'm not sure what,
it's called Labine Field.
oh, Labine
Labine
Field.
Field.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Levine, yeah.
Okay, just making sure. And is it my understanding that there might be two Labine?
There's also the new Park Social at Labine at the corner of Lead Street and Pine Street on the site of the building that burned down. It's
Okay.
also called Labine.
Excellent.
Because of the Levine block.
Really?
So one, I believe, is technically Labine Park, which is the Park Social, and the athletic field is Labine Field.
Okay.
And they're not anywhere near each other.
They are not anywhere near each other. Well, they're about a mile apart.
Okay. So if we look at page 215, we want to put the transfer in there. And what I want to do now is get a proper account number to insert in this, to move the 275 into that fund so you can spend it. And that fund that Alderman Como's referencing is 7056, or is it 8? 7, but better glasses than me. 7058 Park Rehabilitation. And what happens with that is the Director of Public Works is the agent to expend. And it was created in the year 2007.
Also state, I think they went out and got a bid for the work, so that's a good number. Do we have the motion correct now, or
So
does
we-
something have to be added?
Well, it'll be a transfer to 7058 Fund 275. And there's no offset, it's just an add. But I
Mr.
need
Chair?
to get the fund.
Right.
So I have
But-
my 7058.
275. So, did you get the account numbers and everything? He just
Uh,
mentioned. What was the line item? The line?
177058.
17?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have the motion down? No?
Bear with me for 1 second.
Mr. Chair, a question if I may?
Yes.
Is it possible to, not to make the clerk write a whole bunch of extra stuff, but
Oh, I'm willing.
is it possible to do 2 transfers? One for the 75,000 from the Downtown Improvement Committee that we
Well,
just talked
let's-
about, and then the remainder in another?
Let's handle that separately.
Okay.
I see Director Cummings has joined us.
He's just a fly on the wall unless we ask him a question. But he can answer the question about your
St. Andrews.
St. Andrews Park. That legislation has already been put in, but let's hold on that till we get one thing at a time. So,
So what I'm waiting for now, if you can give me a minute, is what the account number should be to put this transfer into.
okay.
May I go up to Mr.
Or from, I should
Yeah.
say.
Thank you. I'm sure what I did, but this is with a motion to reduce and then a motion to add.
Yep.
While we're waiting, Director Cummings, you put in the legislation for the Todd Park in
To add.
Ward 9, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That will be coming before you at the next Board of Aldermen meeting for first reading.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have the Capital Reserve Fund, the ETF for parks. If CFO Griffin wants me to pull it up, it does appear that Levine is named.
Okay.
So what does that mean? What does that mean if it's named?
The legislation to create that particular fund,
Mm-hmm.
it
Doesn't
has
use it for
the
that.
parks listed that it's applicable to. So Levine is,
So it gets included in the
It's
group?
included.
Okay, all right.
Oh, it is, he said? Or it is?
Yes.
it is included.
Do we decide how it's allocated amongst the parks?
No, the spend authority is with the director of DPW, Lisa Photo. I don't know if is it also the Board of Public Works but they are a big advocate of this and
Right.
they will be jumping on it because it is a safety issue.
So we could take that amount out of what Alderman Como is asking for, but we just don't know what that amount will be because we don't know what the allocation numbers are for each park. until DPW decides.
That's what they're looking at.
Okay. Now I get it. A lot of moving parts.
Always is with a budget.
So the motion would be to transfer 275,000 to account number 89758. And it's to transfer the money to Park Rehab, fund number 7058. So just as by way of explanation, you need a transfer in the budget to include it. And then it gets to this, just like all the other ones on here, it gets to fund number 7058, which is Park Rehabilitation. 89758. So that's the account number on page 215. Right.
I don't see any 89758 on page 215.
Right, so Alderman Jettie is asking, or indicating he doesn't have an account number, that's why we just created it. So we put it on the right, so whenever.
As part of the motion.
If you were to add any other transfers, we need an account number. So this never existed before, this particular transfer.
Yes, here we go.
So the department is
Good thing.
198. And then you have it where it's going. Thank you.
All set now? All right.
Want me to reread it, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion from Alderman Como to add.
Point of order, the motion's from Alderman Dowd. I'm not on this committee.
Okay, it's the Alderman Dow Como amendment.
Just want to make sure the transcription is perfect.
Very well noted. Thank you, sir. To add from page 250 to Department 198, line item, the description will be Park Rehabilitation Fund number 17, the amount of $275,000. It's account number 89758.
Okay, further discussion?
So,
Alderman Jettie?
yeah, I'm not against this. I'm trying to understand. So where is the money coming from? It's coming from an existing fund that's,
At the moment, we're adding $275,000 to the mayor's budget.
200.
No, we haven't done the 75. It's still 275 unless somebody makes a motion to take the 75 that's left in the Downtown Improvement Committee and apply it to this account.
okay, so I misunderstood. I thought that we were transferring money from an existing fund that has money in it for the purpose of rehabilitating certain parks. And we're putting it into this budget to rehabilitate Labine Field in this upcoming fiscal year. Did I misunderstand that?
Mr. Griffin?
To make this, the next motion you want to make is to just reduce the 75 in the transfer to downtown improvements to 0. The effect is the same if you don't add anything else.
No.
270.
I see what you mean.
But the answer, direct answer to Alderman Jettie's question is, this money is new. It's added to the mayor's budget. It's not coming from anywhere. You're creating it through the appropriation process of the budget.
So if you make a motion afterwards to reduce the 75,000 left in the downtown improvements, then the ultimate change in the Alderman budget would be 200K, not 275, because we're always dealing with expenditures and revenues, so. Alderman Coleman?
Point of order, if I may.
Yes.
When we do something like that, Mr. Chairman, should we leave $1 in that particular downtown improvement account?
We're not changing, no, we're not doing anything.
So we're not going down to
No,
full
not going down, no,
75,
no,
okay.
no, no. Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer my colleague from Ward 5's question, the Park Rehabilitation Fund doesn't have a balance, so I'm looking to fund that fund so that the work can be done.
Okay, thank you.
And Park Rec is definitely in favor of getting this done as soon as they can get a contractor to do it. Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. I actually wanted to commend Alderman Como for finding something and really digging in for it. I think my question is around the mechanism of how this works. If we just fund this right here, does it just go off, or do we still have the opportunity to hear a little bit more about it? I get a little nervous giving away $300,000, not knowing exactly what's happening and what's in the plan. Does that make sense? So does it come back through us in terms of, do we get to see it
Well,
again?
that expenditure is, I believe it would have to go through finance, right? Contract? Mr. Griffin.
Yeah, I never even introduced myself, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector, John Griffin. It goes into the fund through this action, and then as Alderman Dowd indicated, I'm assuming there's going to be contracts to do this work. So those contracts would be approved by the Board of Public Works and then would come to Finance Committee, their contracts. So you get another shot at all the great things that are going to be done there to make it safe.
In which case you'll get nauseating details.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Kathy?
I would like to make a motion. Oh, I forgot the page was on. Hold on, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I just had it. Moving all around. I would like to make a motion to, this is gonna be weird, but bear with me. I don't wanna take it all the way down, or never mind, I'll just make a motion. I apologize. I'd like to make a motion to take from the Downtown Improvements ETF, page 215, line item 89782. I would like to reduce it down to 0 from 75,000, but I want 10,000 of that to be moved into line item 89768, which is the transfer to housing ETF. And I can speak to that if you'd like.
Okay, just make sure that the clerk here, who's in a daze right now, has all those numbers.
I'm in a daze.
I have no problem repeating it.
I'll tell you the best way, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. Why don't you make your initial motion on what you want to do, and then with that 10,000, make another motion
Okay.
to
So-
appropriate, and that keeps it, I'm just thinking it might be cleaner that way.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Okay. Let me rephrase.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First motion will be, I'd like to move 10,000 from line item 89782, page 215. I'd like to move that into line item 89768, housing, also on page 215. And I can speak to that if I'm allowed to.
sure, if you'd like to,
Thank you.
Okay.
I had already had plans to reduce the downtown improvements ETF anyway, and so I have my work sort of already being done for me. The reason I'd like to move some of the money into housing is this year is a little rough, and I feel like people are really going to need the assistance and the help coming up, especially with a lot of uncertainty. I don't know how far 10,000 is going to go, given the economy and different things. So I'd like to have a little extra in there, just in case we need it.
Every race starts with one step.
Yeah.
Can I ask for clarification on the,
Sure.
so, okay, we'll hold the first amendment that you made temporarily. You'll come back to that. This motion will be to reduce on page 215. What department is that, Alderman Kathy?
It is 198 transfers in, transfers out.
Okay, and you would like add $10,000, right?
I would like to subtract 10,000 from downtown improvements, which is line item 89782, and move it into line item 89768, which is
Okay.
housing.
89768, which is, what's the title?
It is transfer to housing ETF.
You good on that wording, Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just, can I read back just to make sure this is correct? First motion by Alderman Kathy is to reduce, on page 215, Department 89, downtown improvement, account number 8972, the amount of $10,000. There's a subsequent motion by Alderman Kathy.
No, it's all one motion to move it into.
Yeah, we could, I know, but, limited to the way the script is worded here. Motion, then the second half of the motion from Alderman Kathy is to add on page 215, Department 198, account number 89768, housing ETF, the amount of
Yeah,
$10,000.
that's actually gonna be one motion,
Yeah, we could,
just to clarify the paper.
right.
Alderman Cone?
Yes, thank you. Would it, and pardon if I'm out of order, would it be clearer if we just said the first motion was to put $10,000 into funding this housing fund, and then the subsequent motion would be to zero out the downtown improvement committee? Because the net dollar amount will end up the same. That rather than transfer from one to the other, you have a motion to add 10,000 to the housing
Well,
fund,
the
and
transfer,
then
you have to
afterwards
have-
you'd have a motion to reduce.
Transfer, you have to have the money, from to, right, Mr. Griffin, so.
Yeah, maybe I can help. I would recommend the first one to be, you're doing two separate things, really. It's just the net's gonna be 65, so just cut the, reduce the transfer to downtown improvements by 75 and add to the transfer to housing ETF 10, and that does it. Makes it clean.
Okay, what is that now?
You want me to make that motion?
Yeah, the motion would be to reduce the downtown improvements committee, and you've got that information, by 75,000, and move $10,000, keep that other information into
Okay.
the housing.
Whatever
Okay,
works.
good.
Whatever works.
Okay.
So, that would be your motion.
Can you read it back to me just so?
Okay,
We have
I have the Kathy motion to reduce on page 215, Department 89, account number 8972, downtown improvement, the amount of $75,000. Followed by, in addition, by Alderman Kathy, to add on page 215, Department 198, account 89468, housing ETF, the amount of $10,000.
768.
768,
768, yeah.
89768.
89768.
Yes, for
That's what I
housing.
had
Yep.
written, okay.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay, any questions on this? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I'm going to support this. I just want to clarify that, for anyone who's worried about the Downtown Improvement Committee, they have a balance of $247,816. So this $100,000 that's in the budget book on 215 was an error. We gave them $100,000 as a one-time payment last year because the parking revenues weren't going to be enough to support them. But that leaves them, without adding anything this year from, they still are eligible for excess money from the parking
Right.
fund if it exceeds the, I think it's 278,000.
Alderman Clemmons clarified that with the Downtown Improvements Committee, and he also is working on legislation for fiscal year FY '24 and beyond to make this much simpler. I don't want to steal his thunder, so it has nothing to do with his budget. Alderwoman Kelly?
I was wondering if the maker of the motion would just reiterate what that What about, why the housing fund? Can you just explain?
Oh, sure, absolutely,
Alderman
thank
Gaffney.
you.
I think you gave me a sentence, but
No problem. Thank you for asking. Well, given the state of things, mainly in the economy, I believe that people who are going to need help in various ways with housing, I don't think 10,000 is going to go a long way. And my assumption is there will be some amount of that housing that's already closer to downtown. So instead of spending a lot of that money on downtown improvements, why not spend it on people who are living in the downtown area, at least some of them. Obviously, it's to be determined how the money is allocated and inside of that fund, but I think 10,000 doesn't go a long way, and this is a little baby step into giving it a little more legs to do a little bit more good for people who are going to have a hard time.
All set, Alderwoman Kelly?
I was trying to actually find that, what's in that fund currently. Do you happen to know I'm looking in this very small print.
Alderwoman Mitchell?
Sure.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, here it is in the middle of the page. Tiny.
Isn't it 30? Didn't we approve it for 30?
The balance is 40,025.
Oh, yeah, we got 30 and then added 10, so yeah, that's fine. 10 more is fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Answered my own question.
Alderman Wiltshire?
I'm gonna support that motion. $10,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it helps.
Yep.
I mean, it certainly helps, so anything we can do to help with housing, I'm all in.
Okay. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I don't think, 10,000 is that, is gonna do a whole lot. But, I'm not against it, but, I'm thinking that, wasn't there a proposal and maybe Director Cummings could help clarify for me? Wasn't he looking to allocate, was it the ARPA, a substantial amount from ARPA for the Housing Trust Fund? What, am I ringing any bells?
Yes.
Director Cummings?
Director Cummings, you want to chime in?
Yes, I'd be happy to. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I would just need to clarify that what is being referenced is the housing ETF, which I quickly just looked up, appears to be the Housing Trust Fund. If CFO can confirm that, my quick look on it is we're talking about the same account. Then yes, there is a proposal before your subcommittee to transfer $10 million of ARPA funds into that account.
Question for Director Cummings, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Director Cummings, those ARPA funds, are they restricted for use?
Well, that's a great question, and so I don't want to hijack this evening's conversation by going into the details of that, but the simple answer is no. Because of how our finance team is structured this, it will allow us to have maximum flexibility, which is the goal.
Alderman Gaffney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this a guaranteed thing, or is this something you're looking to do and we don't know if we're going to get the 10 million? We had the 10 million, we're just deciding where it goes.
And that's up to you to decide. You being the body, the Board of Aldermen, which nothing has been decided as of yet, but there is a proposal before you.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Entirely?
Mm-hmm. Or, sorry, I'm going to withdraw the part that goes into housing and just cut 75 from DI, or downtown improvements. Because if the 10 million's coming, then obviously I'd support that when it comes on our desks. So.
Okay.
I think so.
You all set with that?
Yes.
Griffin? All right, so the motion before us is to cut the remaining 75K from the Downtown Improvement Committee account. If there are no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The clerk is glad he brought an eraser.
My apologies to the clerk.
No problem, brother, no problem.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I may, there was a discussion about the holiday stroll. Seemed to be a worry. The mayor and I, we escrowed that money, and we plan to re-escrow that money, like for like. So those that were worried there was no money for the holiday stroll, I'm trying to allay those fears at this point.
Yeah, I would have been putting up flags if, if I didn't already know that, yes. So everybody understands that? The money's escrowed for the downtown, all right? Alderman Jettie?
So that brings up a question. So we transferred 25,000 to the Great American Downtown.
Yes.
So,
That's for the other expenses for the, that we're talking about, not for the not for GAD. This is, there's several expenses, police, fire, there's a bazillion expenses with the downtown. I mean, with the stroll.
okay, so they
Whatever the
need,
amount of money is, I think, is what they're talking about.
so they need more than the 25,000, and they're gonna
Yeah,
get that
no.
some other way.
GAD, no, but the departments like police, fire, and public service, DPW, they do. You recall on the stroll, DPW puts a huge truck at every street to block it off. And there's a significant amount of police there, most of them on overtime, and firemen. And that all has to get paid for.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, I kind of remember that there was, a couple of years ago, that there was a decision made that we would charge Great American Downtown, you know, the police send them a bill and DPW.
That's where that money goes. The money that's being allocated, that's how it gets paid. Because GAD doesn't have the money unless we give it to them.
Okay.
All set? Alderwoman Cleen?
If I'm not out of line, can I clarify what you were talking about with the police?
Quickly.
And GAD, okay, thank you. One of the things, when I spoke to ex-director Paul Shea from there, I had asked about that. He said at the beginning, the police only charged them a small amount, but then as budgets got tighter and tighter, they started charging them the full amount of the cost of police and so on. And their budget just could not handle it. So what the city did was, so that it didn't hurt the police, it didn't hurt GAD, they put that public safety money, which would be DPW and so on, into a separate account to cover that. It doesn't cover GAD's cost of the stroll, et cetera, and so on. But it does take care of that other expense, because it jumped from like $300 to an extraordinary amount of money. And that's, I think, where that all came from. I had a hard time understanding it. Why do we have this line item? And then you said you needed some more money. So that's how it was explained to me, if that helps any.
All set?
Thank you. Yes.
Alderman Cohen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered if I could get a clarification, because this is my first year and haven't been around in previous years. We haven't had a stroll in several years. Does GAD not still have the money that we sent them in previous years that would not have been spent on these police details since there was no stroll?
No money get transferred to them because there was no expenses.
So in previous years' budgets, if it was allocated, we just didn't spend it and it carried over? Oh, thank you.
Goes into unexpended. Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification. So the 25 that we just gave to GAD, that's for essentially them operating what they do on a general basis.
Their staff for a year.
Right. We will then give them other additional monies for other events, and that monies will be paid for instance, I know not only this, but police. So we're essentially giving them money to pay our police. Why don't we just pay our police?
I'm not sure how the money gets transferred. You know, Mr. Griffin, does the city just pay the police and fire them direct? I know they give it through GAD.
I'm not sure if they give it to GAD, but I know the police get paid.
Oh, yeah. I bet the police get paid.
Oh, yeah.
Firemen too.
And that area where it's located gets from 27,000 to zero.
I just thought it was like an extra step to do that.
Yeah.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, you might think it's an extra step, but there's people out there that don't understand the inner workings. And a very common example on the fire department, let's just say, snow piles need to be removed in front of the fire station so visibility can be maintained. We have Public Works, but they're busy doing something else. Their hours are allocated. So to make accountability, this is the whole thing, you know, it's not a shell game. Everything is within the public perusal.
Oh, I didn't think it was a shell game. I just thought it was inefficient.
It's demanded by people, make sure it ain't a shell game.
So, I think we're all set. People will bear with me. I have a motion that I'm going to be making, but I wanted to preface that by a discussion. The school department has $1 billion in infrastructure, 18 schools, and it keeps growing with a new school. And the deferred maintenance projects that were put in by Mr. Smith for the school department this year total $1,280,000. The mayor in his budget allocated $100,000 for deferred maintenance. The problem is when we don't do the deferred maintenance, it's pay me now or pay me a lot more later. So there are a few of these projects that are very high priced, and we wouldn't touch them in this budget process. But there are 3 projects, Dr. Chris repaving a fire lane and fixing and repaving the playground for $75,000. Mount Pleasant repair and paint high walls and stairwells and gym that custodians don't paint anything high, and it's a long story. And the high schools to install motion detector sensors, $60,000. So that amounts to $210,000. So in order to assist the school department in deferred maintenance and try to keep ahead of our schools to some degree, because we're not covering every one of what they needed, I'd like to add $160,000 to the total financial services estimated revenue fund, number 126, on page 34, changing the current amount from $20,628,415 to $20,788,415, and adding $160,000 to the capital improvements project line 14, school deferred maintenance, making the total for that line $260,000. And
Can you
I guess
repeat
ask
those
myself
lines?
that-
I lost you.
What?
When you were telling us the lines, I couldn't keep up with you. What?
Oh, all right, I can repeat it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask to see it.
I've got it written so I can just give it to them.
Hey, which page was that again?
All right, so,
34?
and I'm gonna have to clear this with the finance director. It's to add $160,000 to total financial services estimated revenue fund, number 126, on page 34, changing the current amount from $20,628,415 to $20,788,415, and adding $160,000 to capital improvements project line 14, school deferred maintenance, making the total for that line $260,000.
What page
Now-
is
What
that on?
page is line 14 on?
218.
218, deferred maintenance, sorry.
So last line.
And I just want to check, now, let me finish.
Yeah.
You can have that. When we estimate our revenues, as has been said many times, we are very conservative. And when you're talking an area with over $20 million in revenues, 160,000 is pretty much a drop in the bucket. And every year, we've over or underestimated our revenues by a substantial amount. I think you'd agree, Mr. Griffin, and then it gets allocated different ways into spending. But in this case, we are trying to ensure that our $1 billion in infrastructure has some degree of care, and we can get some of these things done and not have to pay a significant amount later to fix the problem we didn't fix when we should have. So, are you all set, okay with that, Mr. Griffin?
If I may, well, first of all, John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. What I'd recommend, because the revenues are always estimated locally, so you don't really need, my recommendation is you don't add to the revenues, and I'll explain why in a minute. What I would recommend is on page 217 is where the appropriations approved. I would recommend that you add 160,000 to account 81,100 capital improvements, and specifically state you want the school deferred maintenance to increase by that amount. The page on 218 is just for clarity, for, showing you what the capital improvements are going to be spent on. So what you're really doing is you're increasing the budget by another 160,000 appropriations. We've made an estimate in this budget for revenues. We have been conservative. It's all in the tax calculation at the end. You don't need to put the revenue, thinking that you're offsetting, because
That's what I was trying to do, offset.
you're trying to do that in the spirit of that, that's great, but it's really, you're increasing the appropriation side, which is the key. But you've explained to the group here that you're hoping to get 160,000 somewhere and pay for it.
The other thing that I was trying to handle was, I know for a fact the fire department's gonna be raising their fees for things. It's part of the strategic plan. I know that the DPW is gonna be raising their fees, because that, we've already talked about that. I think there are other areas that are gonna be raising their fees, both in Matt Sullivan's area and other places. So I'm assuming, or going out on a limb and saying, our revenues are gonna be higher than we have in this budget. And for $160,000, we're going to be taking care of a portion of $1 billion worth of school infrastructure. And having worked, I can't even count how many schools, I know when we took down the old Nashua High, that building was not well maintained, and then we ended up, after 15 years, tearing down a building and ending up with staircases, basically. That was all that was left. You notice the high schools still look new today, because we built them right, and that's what we're doing with the new middle schools. But these other schools have deferred maintenance that needs to be taken care of, and we're not even addressing the $1.3 million that he requested. We're just covering another 160,000. So I think it's extremely important. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think, I think there are many examples of the city not taking care of the stuff it has. And, we keep, building new things, and we're not taking care of the stuff we already have. I agree with you completely. But I've heard you lecture many times since I've become an alderman, that this, we only have control over the bottom line with the school department. We can add 160,000 to their budget, but is there any guarantee they're gonna use it for this purpose?
That doesn't apply in this case, because it's under deferred maintenance. It's under capital projects. It's not in the school department budget. Correct, Mr. Griffin?
That is correct.
So, no, this is for these projects only. They can't spend it for anything else.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I'm not saying they will, or they would, but I just...
having been on that side of the fence, trust me, I would not throw this 160 out there for general spending. Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have two maybe clarifying questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Alderman O'Brien.
You can go first if you'd like to, clerk.
No, I think that it had the same question Alderman Jettie. I too am concerned. because of the bottom line. And whenever we deal with the school department, we have to probably do exactly what the chair did. Earmark it, for lack of a better term, into what we want on that. And I think, I'm content with the answer. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
so these
Chairman.
deferred maintenance accounts are standalone, and it's not, they can't use it for anything else, the school department, only this. Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this question is to Mr. Griffin. Alderman Dowd stated that our revenues are usually underestimated by, quote, a significant amount. Could you ballpark what a significant amount would be? So I have an idea of what we're looking at before I decide to spend more money.
Good question. Significant amount means that we generally receive about $15 million in motor vehicle registrations. Now, if we put that in the budget and we don't make it, we have what's called a revenue deficit. Not good. So what we do is we budget around 11 million. This is what Treasurer Fredette had done for years. So we kind of know that through the tax setting process, tax rate setting process, you're going to be able to apply about $4 million against the tax rate, which brings down the tax rate. If it's 4%, it's going to bring it down to 2%.
Right.
So, and then there's other items, because I've seen the struggle. I've seen you, Alderman Jettie, fees, and great stuff, great discussion, that you're trying to raise the numbers in here. The better approach is keep the same numbers in here and raise the fees and have surplus. Right? Now, if, for example, we put the 15 million in here, and you felt you might spend the 4 million on an appropriation. We don't want you to do that. So it's a balancing act. So when we represent to the rating agencies that rate our bonds, that we budget revenue conservatively, they're comfortable that we're not going to have to come back to you on a revenue shortfall.
Okay.
So that's what that. But I wanted to bring up two other items. One kind of hot off the press. You talked to Anil Dan Donovan the other night, but we are going to get about $1.7 million in fiscal '23 and $1.1 million in fiscal '24 for what's called extraordinary school aid. I'm not sure if people know about it, but I found it kind of funny that it's extraordinary. And it's pegged off the free and reduced lunch numbers. Complicated as usual, but we're going to get about $1.7 million. Now, what's going to happen there is you don't race over to the school department and cut their budget. No, you keep the budget the same. But now we're going to get $1.7 million more in revenue.
Okay.
Now, the
That's
thing
so
about that
important.
is they're going to put it, if it's school aid, state aid, they're literally going to fill that line in when we do a rate setting.
Okay.
They're not going to give us a check and then we can do anything we want with it. No, they're literally going to put it in there and set the tax rate.
Right.
The other thing that Alderman O'Brien knows all too well is the notion of a 7.5 one-time only reduction in our pension costs. Sitting here today, I can't tell you how they're going to handle it because the NHRS management usually likes to control things. So they very well might take the employer rates for this 1 year and reduce them by 7.5%. What that does is when we file our wages with them, they're guaranteed they're not paying more because they're going to have to talk to the state and say, we need our money. They're not, it's state funded and that's a great deal. But you might say, well, can we cut our budget $2 million? You could, I wouldn't recommend it, but I really know that as the time goes on, that our bills are going to be less than they otherwise would be. But just keep in that mind as financial management, you don't want to go into all of these budgets and start reducing pension costs.
Right.
Because it is a moving target. Sometimes we have a lot of overtime because we have attrition, especially in the police and fire departments. So we got to be careful. But that's another item that you folks were kind of thinking about as
So
you're
these
searching to
things-
cut things.
If these funds came in near term, when I forget what the, September or whenever they go up to set the tax rate to the state, all those things are taken into consideration. 2 years ago, we thought the tax rate was going to be a 7% increase. In the end, it ended up under 3%, and that was caused by the huge insurance costs. So that's why they've had a difficult time in saying, oh, I think it's gonna be 3% or 3.5%, because there's too many variables in the equation that sets the tax rate, and the tax rate is set by the state, not us. So we can sort of guesstimate, but other additional revenues keep coming in, things change, and you know, the tax rate's probably not as severe as one would think. It has nothing to do with assessing, so we don't want to get into that discussion. Alderman Kathy?
I just had a follow-up to the same item. When we talked to the school department, I know Mr. Donovan explained in great detail, which I appreciated, all of the ESSER funds, and I know at one point for the ESSER 3, there's going to be some renovations. Is there any way that some of that ESSER funds could be used for these capital improvements that you're seeking, or would we not have those monies available to us for that particular?
No, we explored this, and the state won't allow it, and the federal government, whoever's funding this. ESSER funds are very limited, and last night at the Board of Education, Finance Committee meeting that was happening opposite our fund that we were having in the auditorium, they're getting ESSER funds to modify Birch Hill and Maine Dunstable, a significant amount of money. There will be some additional bond money required just to cover things that aren't covered by ESSER funds. So that's going to be being added very shortly, and they transferred it to the joint special. So all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm a major contractor in the United States doing several buildings at the same time. So just keeping these meetings straight is crazy. So that's coming down the pike. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it takes time. But
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
oh, believe me, if we could have spent it, yes, we would have spent it. Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. Just sort of chuckled to myself that I was nice to hear that Maine Dunstable will be getting a facelift. My daughter graduated from Maine Dunstable yesterday, so.
Yeah.
You were next on the list.
Yeah, well, my son will be there in a few years, so. I actually wanted to just say thank you for bringing this up. This was one of the notes that I had as well, to make sure that we could get some more funds into there. My question, to probably CFO Griffin, but it's more of a ethereal question here, but like, we have the same issue with SURF. We're never funding it enough to get in there. I'd love to see us have more thought to how, to your point, the school buildings are a significant infrastructure that we have in the city, and we need to be taking care of them. So how do we potentially get a path where we can make sure there's enough in there for these projects as they go along?
On surf acquisition, you mean? Vehicles?
No, I was saying that SURF is a lot like this. It's never funded enough for what we need. And so what I'm saying is school deferred building also never has enough in there. So how do we start to put together a schedule for?
I'm going to let him answer in a second, but if you look at the capital improvements subcommittee, they rank things from A to D, D I think, and then within that, and it's never funded anywhere near what's asked for. Things have to sometimes sit in there for years before they actually get to a level, and that's because it's a heck of a lot of money. But I'll let Mr. Griffin.
And I understand that. I think it's overall, like, how do we start to chip away at it?
I mean, you're asking great questions, and I have the pleasure of being here since August 23rd of 2010. I'll give you a little contrast. When I was the finance committee member elected, I know what that's all about, at Tingsboro, we have like $500,000 worth of capital improvement programs, and we have, and that budget's about $32 million. And with a $302 million proposed budget, we have capital of $1 million. So, and not to, I mean, I've been getting a little bit beat up on spending cap stuff lately, which is no problem. But I lived through the recession here, and then the increases, and we never had enough money to fund this stuff. And as I mentioned to Alderman Jettie, with all sincerity, I said, you can't start now with a Big Bang Theory. You're gonna need like corrections. Meaning, and you can do analysis. We had the bonding analysis, we have about 17 million, which is less than, Alderman Sullivan corrected me, less than 10% of the capital budget, of the operating budget. We did a little looking at the great city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. At one point, they had a $600 million operating budget and an $85 million capital budget. So as Alderman Dow points out, we're just bonding things because there's no money to fix things. And I remember when Mitt Romney was elected governor of Massachusetts, I was with another city at the time. He wasn't going to put any money into any new buildings until the cities could show that they could repair what they had and maintain what they had. So during that time, from probably 2011 to 15, we had to underfund things. We had to underfund the program for SURF. We had to use reserves that we had saved in the benefits fund, do a lot of different things, because we needed to pay the people to work, and we needed to pay the other cost drivers that you see in the budget. So there has to be a capital improvements committee that's tied to funding, and we don't have that. Do you, like in Tingsboro, do you put new bleachers in, or do you fix one of the fire stations, and people make the decisions? Here we have a whole process that's very well defined, and it's necessary under state law, but it's not, our ranking is done by a number of citizens, plus Alderman Jettie and I and Rose Evans, the comptroller. We rank things based on need, importance, citizen safety, et cetera. And you get, like this year, the request was $55 million. And the total 6-year plan is almost $600 million. So as you can see, we're a long way from righting the ship. I'm not sure how it could be done, given this difficult economy we're in. But it could be that you take the million and you add $500,000 to that, and then next year you add another $500,000, and you work on these programs. Sean Smith has come into our committee every year, and with all sincerity, he's got all these buildings, and he needs to maintain things.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge, not sure how, but you can't get it all back at once. You can't take this $1 million capital improvement budget and make it $10 million, right? Because you increased the tax rate by 5%. So it's a give and take. You need both. You need the people, the buildings, and the equipment. Otherwise it's a struggle. Thank you.
If I can respond.
Follow up?
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I know it's not an easy task. Having sat on this committee for a number of years, I get it. It's just give and take. I think the maintenance thing for me has been an especially poignant thing, because when we let things lapse until the point that they have to complete, it's an emergency, it costs us a great deal more to fix it than if we've been maintaining it slowly along the years. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but the maintenance thing has been especially eye-opening to watch.
So back to the motion before us, we're going to eliminate the revenue part, and the motion is to add $160,000 to the school deferred maintenance account. And the chair has my paper with the pages and.
I'll give it right back.
Does he have the new pages for capital improvements?
It's
217,
capital
right?
improvements, project line 14, school deferred, school maintenance, the increased in total by $160,000 to make the grand total $260,000.
But don't we also have to notate for page 217, line item 81100, you're adding 160 to that line item on that page?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Alderman Wiltshire.
I know you said this is for deferred maintenance, but did you mention a specific project that needs to be done?
They have three items hang on, that I got the number from. It's Dr. Chris, repair the fire lane and repave the playground for $75,000. Mount And Mount Pleasant, repair and paint high walls and stairwells in gym, 75,000. And in the high schools, install motion detection sensors, 60,000. And part of that is security, so won't get into the details, but.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah.
and there are additional funds coming from the state for additional security stuff that we will be spending. Alderman McLean?
Thank you so,
Alderman McLean.
no, yeah, Alderman Clegg, yeah, thank you. I get confused too. Thank you so much. My question is, I think similar to one of my colleagues had kind of mentioned, I know that we can't affect their budget, their bottom line budget. I mean, only their bottom line budget. And these are going to be in their deferred maintenance, but can we say that they have to do these three things if we were to put money in it? Or are we just putting money in it and they can end up doing whatever they felt is necessary?
We did that one year and
We
things
put it
changed.
into the, yeah.
And they came back and said, okay, there were other funds available to do this other thing, so we want to switch it to this thing. I'd rather just give them the leeway, because things happen. You know, one year, as Alderman Jetty Wells knows, they lost the pump. The pump was $90,000, and there was a lot of concern about $90,000 for a pump, and I gave the Board of Ed and the Alderman a tour of the high school, and the pump's the size of a small Volkswagen. Pumps water up 4 floors, as Alderman Jetty can attest by going to see it. So things happen. If we lose a pump like that, for instance, I'd rather have them have the flexibility. It would only be used for deferred maintenance items, though. Yes.
Follow up?
Follow up.
So while we're talking about these three items that add up to $230,000, and we're gonna,
Oh,
75, 75, and 60 adds up to 230, but we're only gonna put 160,000.
210.
210, oh my God, I can't even add. 210, yes, sorry. $210,000, but we're only gonna put 160,000.
we're adding 160,000 to the 100,000, so it's 260,000.
Okay. But getting back to what I was saying, if they decided for whatever reason, it's very possible that these particular projects that we're speaking of will not get done. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that that's out there, so that people can't turn around and say, well, Dr. Crisp, they were supposed to do this, but
It
they
will-
have the leeway to make their decision.
It would only be if something catastrophic happened somewhere else in the school system, they didn't have a choice, they had to fix it. And they can't materialize money, so it would get pushed off probably. So,
And if I may, I have no issue with that, and it makes absolute sense. I just want to make sure that the public is aware that if they decide that they need to do something else, they are free to do what they need once we put the money in that account.
it would have to go back through
Their
us,
finance,
our
us,
finance to.
their finance, yes.
I mean, I sat down with Mr. Smith and gone through this list in fine-tooth comb. And have physically seen most of these projects, or I wouldn't be advocating for them. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you. Along the lines of Alderman Clee, I feel kind of comfortable with this. I know exactly what you're saying. Fearful, I've seen that happen before. But I take what's happening now, this is on tape. I think they're seeing it. They know the intentions of this board. And I happen to know on the good authority, our liaison is very good friends with the chairman of the budget committee. I wonder who that would be. So I think when that comes up, that he could establish, being his job as the liaison, what the intentions of this budget committee was.
Thank you.
Yeah, he would definitely be on the phone with me. I mean, I'm on the phone with him almost every day now because of these schools. Alderman Timmons?
Yes, thank you. I know I'm not on this committee, but I do have a couple of questions. One is the motion detection. I thought the schools had that already. I have two questions.
I can't get into
Especially in the high
details, but I
school.
think it's things that they're adding.
They added, okay. I thought they did. Secondly, there's maintenance in the building almost 24/7 because they have 3 shifts.
That's under a
In the
different
high
account.
school.
That's under their normal day-to-day
Right.
maintenance.
So if there's
That's
gonna
not
be,
deferred maintenance.
but if it's gonna be motion detectors in the school, then the maintenance department will trigger that, when you think, and then I don't see.
My guess is those are being installed by an outside company
To put where? In the schools, right?
in the school.
Right, so if maintenance is in there, is in the school for 3 shifts, I don't understand why you would need them, because they would be moving around the building all 3 shifts.
They turn off.
They're in
There's no
areas
reason to
where,
turn them off.
they're in areas
They're in
where the maintenance guys wouldn't be cleaning at night.
They
I
clean the
can't get
building,
into details.
but they clean the building at night.
Yeah, but the motion
Yeah.
detection's for lights, right? It's motion detection for lights, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
For outside lights, they're not for inside, they're not for motion inside the building, that's my
well,
question.
I can tell you that at the high school, there isn't enough motion activity by the custodians to cause a light.
Okay, you said that, not me. Okay.
All right, any other questions? Everybody understands what the motion is? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any other motions to be made on the budget? And Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I can even make this motion, but I'm gonna try, because Mr. Griffin's here, so he'll correct me if I'm incorrect. In a previous meeting with Mr. Griffin, he notated that we used the motor vehicle permit fees of estimated 11 million, that's what we put in the budget, to buy down the tax rate. Is that correct?
Mr. Griffin?
Just a point of clarity, it does 2 things. One, we're comfortable with the numbers. To the extent other revenue items don't equal what we budget, it helps offset potential deficits as well.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, follow up?
Can we as aldermen decide what we want to do with that money? Can we add more?
Mr. Chairman, it's referred to as local revenue, so you could.
Okay. All right, well, that in mind, I would like to make a motion to increase the, I'd essentially like to double what we use to buy back the tax rate from 4 million to 8 million on page 33, line item number 42200, motor vehicle permit fees. I'd like to use 8 million instead of 4 million to offset the tax rate.
Mr. Griffin, you want to chime in on that?
Yes, if I may. So we have the fiscal '22 budget, and we're expecting surplus in motor vehicle, which is called revenue surplus. We go through a process of closing out the year, which identifies appropriation surplus by the liquidation of purchase orders, et cetera. We analyze the appropriations not spent, and through the escrow process, determine if we should move already approved escrows forward into the essentially fiscal '23. So that leaves maybe some appropriations not spent, so they lapse the general fund surplus. The mechanics of the surplus in revenue from whatever source we get it, mostly motor vehicle, lapses to surplus. So on or before September 1st of each year, the mayor provides the Board of Aldermen with 2 things. One is notification of overlay needs and surplus. Then the mayor, working with the financial team, we decide, based on our review of the then unassigned fund balance, we decide how much the mayor will recommend to you to apply against the tax rate. So although it seems a little bit late to do that, it's perfect timing because we've closed the books, we know what the numbers are, and we're getting ready for the submittal of the assessing MS1 to the DRA to tell us what the denominator is, meaning the assessed value. So even though your motion let me make sure I'm clear. We've used about 4 million to reduce the tax rate. It's predominantly coming from motor vehicle. The Board of Aldermen at this time, you can't predetermine how we're gonna use it, because we're gonna report to you the ramifications of doing things like that. Unfortunately, if you took 8 million, 12 million, whatever, and applied it against this year's tax rate, next year we've got a problem. Because it's a one-time item. It's not recurring, right? So I'd be cautious in changing any revenue items at that magnitude, because the motion really isn't, it doesn't seem like it's gonna work, because we determine with your recommendation, you're gonna get a resolution, usually in early September, that says we'd like to apply this amount against the tax rate. As we've discussed, we're gonna be really up against timelines, because we wanna make sure that the assessments are accurate. All the residents and businesses have the opportunity of what's called informal hearings. So even if you knew the number on August 17th, people have a chance, residents have a chance to ask questions at informal hearings with Vision Government Solutions. So we've never had anybody want to increase revenue or decrease revenue. I'm not sure I'm just trying to explain the mechanics and the process, but were you thinking of taking like the 11 million and reducing it to 7 million? So we have 8 million, or I'm not sure what you wanted to do.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me clarify my motivations, which I should have done in the first place. I appreciate the explanation. That clarifies a lot of the process for me. The reason that I wanted to do that was, based on the information we have now, this tax year is going to suck for a lot of people, pardon my language, based on the numbers that we have just now. An estimated 2.3 increase, 39% average home values going up. I did the math, that's a lot of money, depending on the house you live in. So I understand when people say, well, if you decrease it a lot this year, it goes up the next year. I understand that. My issue is this year, in particular, coming out of COVID, decreased wages for a lot of people. Now we're going into an inflationary cycle, which does not seem to be ending anytime soon. And it may get worse. I'm not predicting that it will. It could. We don't know. Maybe it gets better. I don't know. But right now, it's not great. So I'm a fan of a reprieve, a break, if you will. Not necessarily no increase, but a smaller increase than would be typical for a property tax increase. And in my estimation, in my opinion, that would give the citizens of Nashua time to recover, because based on most economists, we're looking into 2023 before we're really out of what we're in right now. And so if we give them a little bit of break this year, they have some time to recover. And if the rate goes up next year, they have time to save for that as well, because they're aware that it's going to go back up. They're aware, as long as we communicate correctly, that this is not typical. So for instance, if we usually increase the rate 3%, just as an example, and then this year we say, you know what, we're going to make it 1.5, 1.7, a little bit of a break. The next year, you go back up to maybe 3, 3.1, whatever. They have time to cover that difference. And we have time as a city to figure out if we can even leverage some of our revenues to help get us back to that point as well, because we're in a particular weird time in history, and we've made a lot of decisions based on how the markets are going. And so this is no different than that. We're moving and shaking with what's going on. And that's why I wanted to do that. I have no problem withdrawing the motion and dealing with it later. But that's where my head's at as far as wanting to increase the monies we use to offset the tax rate.
I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I agree, we will get an opportunity in September to put more money towards reducing the tax rate. now is not a good time to do it. Once they have all of the revenues and everything in place and close out the current year, and we know how much money we're dealing with, then you can make a logical decision on how much money you want to put towards the tax rate to reduce the rate. But now is not the time to do it because there are, again, ramifications that could cause a catastrophic increase in prices or taxes next year.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Just one final point, and I should have made this point. This budget is for next year's tax, not this year's. So the mechanics are gonna be identifying revenue surplus, identifying appropriations not spent, getting a grand total, more and better information by September, more and better information by the time you deliberate what you want to do. So you're going to get a resolution that's going to have the mayor's recommendation. And at that time, with hopefully better information, you're going to be able to say, I want 8 million against the tax rate. Somebody might say, I want 2 million again. I mean, because we're going to lay out the plan. Now, it's been a very challenging year because to estimate a tax rate, I mean, I can do estimates of tax rates, but I'm going to be wrong 50% of the time, right? Next year is going to be easier because we're going to know what the tax rate is, and then if we keep a budget to a 3% increase, but given the inflation, you're going to kind of know what the number is. So when Mr. T-Boom says a person 20 years ago I can do the same thing, and I think Mrs. Ortolano said I could too, and I know everybody here knows we can estimate the tax rate because you have the leverage to get to the tax rate with the surplus. And then so you're gonna know, like if you're a residential customer, you're in a ranch, it goes from 200 to 300, you know what your bill is gonna be with the new tax rate. You don't know it yet. That's why the mayor was trying to say your value's going up 39%. Your tax bill is probably not gonna go up 39%. But once we get through this next month, it's like waiting for Christmas or maybe graduation, or maybe not Christmas, but you're waiting for the numbers, and the key is the total assessed value and the individual assessments on the homes and businesses, and give them the opportunity to come in and ask questions. That's the whole idea. Because right now, according to some reports I have, people are calling up, hey, come on in. The people who wouldn't let anybody in 2 years ago, like, hey, you gotta come in and see the place. They might have trashed it might have been after a party was conducted, but in any event, adding a little levity. It's premature to do it in this budget, but certainly in the next couple of months, you're gonna know, like, this is what we have.
I appreciate that. I withdraw the motion.
All right, thank you. Alderman O'Brien, then Alderman Wiltshire.
Enough is said. I too feel it's premature. We have the sword of Damocles standing over our head, the spending cap. 35 years on the fire department, 25 years of it was under the spending cap. Ever wonder why we're paving roads now and why we didn't pave the roads in 1999? I'll tell you why. Spending cap. A lot of stuff. I worked in a fire station where the rain came down the walls. You didn't hang your coat on the wall because it would get wet. And that's why. Spending cap. So we don't know yet, and I have to say it is kind of premature. I admire what you're trying to do, absolutely. But I think right now it's a wee bit early. Let's kind of time to digest a little bit better, because unfortunately a lot of this is not in our control. I'm at peace with Ukraine and Russia myself personally, you know what I mean? And I'm not really charging, I don't own a gas station, so, a lot of these things are out of the perusal of this particular board. So, in practical sense.
All right, Alderman Wiltshire?
Yeah, Mr. Griffin, can you tell me how much the city is getting in ARPA funds this year?
Certainly, we're getting a total of about 16.139 million. And that was the total allotment. It came in 2 transfers from the U.S. Treasury, so we have 16.
So we have the money now?
We have all the money, and for those new board members, you've already accepted and appropriated that total amount last year. So we have the 16.1 in the bank
Thank you.
this time. Thank you.
Any other motions? Alderman Kathy?
I have a few more. All right. these two there's two motions in there, they kind of go together, but, I'd like to make a motion to, sorry, I've got multiple motions going on here. All right, I'd like to make a motion to remove $88,910 from, page 54, General Government 103 Legal, line item 51100. And that is to eliminate the position of the Right to Know Coordinator, because I want to move those funds elsewhere in the budget to help out with admin services.
So the motion is to reduce the funds for the Right to Know Coordinator in the legal department. Discussion?
Where is that?
Page 54 is the wages, but if you go to page 278, it lists all the positions for full-time, and it'll show Right to Know Coordinator.
Actually, appropriations under the legal department.
Say that again?
The appropriation for that amount of money is under the legal department, which is, you're looking at a list of employees.
Yeah, but I named the page that it's on, the line item. Not the positions, I named the actual budget line item as well in my motion.
No.
So,
So can you repeat that?
Sure,
What
absolutely.
line item is that?
I'm making a motion to subtract $88,910, which represents the salary of the Right to Know Coordinator, from page 54, General Government 103 Legal, line item 51100, wages full-time.
Discussion, Alderman,
well, can the clerk just ask, motion by Alderman Cathy to remove on page
54,
54, Department
legal or general government.
103 Legal.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see, and that is from what line item?
51100.
500,
1100.
and an amount,
$88,910.
$88,910,000.
And can I speak to that, Mr. Chair, when he's ready?
you get that all down?
I get that, yep.
All right, Alderman Cathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, let you know where my brain space is at. In my opinion, I don't feel that that position is needed. In addition, I would like to, in another motion, be changing the paralegal position in admin services, take that money, reduce it a little bit, and put in 2 full-time positions that would specifically address the digitizing records for the Inception Technologies project. Ms. Kleiner, when she met with us, mentioned that she needs $52,000 for 1 full-time employee to cover the documents, the redacting, and all that. And so basically, I want to give her 2 full-time employees to expedite that process and get those documents up online, which I think mitigates a lot of the right to know issues that we've been having if the public can just go online and get those documents without having to request them all the time. So,
Alderman Timmons?
Oh, thank you. I think that's a bad idea. We have so many right to know. We have to have someone else to do those right to know. And the right person to do the right to know is the legal department. It should stay there, and we should have somebody that works solely on that for that reason. If those people stop writing those RTKs all the time, maybe we won't need the lawyer. But at this particular time, we need the lawyer to keep everybody else from working more than they have to. They have an 8-hour job, and they spend most of their time doing RTKs, and I think that's wrong. And I think we need to keep the RTK lawyer.
Thank you.
It's ridiculous.
Alderman Wilshire?
Yeah, I can't support the motion.
Closer to the mic.
All right.
You just gave the boss lady.
Yeah.
I can't support that motion. I think it takes up too much of everyone else's time, detracts from the work that they're doing for the city and for their departments. You know, we get there's a ton of right-to-know requests. I can't see taking that position out of there and putting that workload elsewhere, so I won't support that motion.
Other comments, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, I too, I understand the purpose, but I'm reluctant to, get into micromanaging the legal department and the administrative affairs department. I would feel more comfortable, you can always, talk to them and tell them what your suggestions might be. And, I would feel more comfortable if they came to us and said, this is, what we want to do and how we want to do it. And this is, the money we need, and we can agree to give them the money or not. But, that's kind of what they're doing. And, I think it's difficult as an alderman to, try to micromanage is the word that keeps coming to my mind. So I can't, I understand and I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't support it.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here, and I'm going to remain off camera so you don't have to see the massive bandage on my head. So I would like to speak in support of Alderman Cathy's motion to remove this position. When I first heard it, I understand that there was an increased load on the right to know situation, but based on the minutes or from what happened last night in the public meeting, I think that it seems to be going in a better direction. And to add another head at this point onto this budget, I don't think is a good idea. I'm going to support the motion for Alderman Cathy. Thanks.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm not a voting member of this committee, and while I respect everything that's been said by the aldermen that are in favor of this, the issue here is things may have slowed down at the moment, but we don't know what the rest of the year is going to be. And this isn't an added position. This is a position that's already existing. We would literally be cutting a position from them at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And if I also recall, Attorney Bolton did comment that they would be using this person for other things if they weren't doing right to know. So there's enough work there for them to be handled between legal cases, et cetera, as well as right to know. And I'm glad that the alderman from Ward 5 commented and said micromanaging, because I've always been a fan against any kind of micromanaging. I think we can speak to any department, whether public works and et cetera. I don't think we should be in the place to say, you don't need this position, you don't need that position. If they were coming in after and saying, I want to add this position, as Ms. Kleiner has said, maybe at that point we can say, can we put that off for a year or something? I would not in her particular case. I think she does need that position, but I don't think we should be telling them that they have to cut. They know what they need to run their department, so thank you.
Alderman O'Brien?
No, I'm gonna yield. I think everybody here has their mind. I think we're all set.
I'm just gonna add that I probably work with the legal department more than anybody on the Board of Aldermen.
Okay.
And I can tell you that Attorney Clark is out straight just doing legislation. Attorney Leonard works with me when she can. She is extremely busy with court cases, and as far as the school, she's doing easements and working with Eversource and a number of other things that sometimes end up in negotiations or court. I believe that the new attorney, they're trying to take some of the workload off of the other attorneys because they are out straight. So I would not be in favor of reducing this position, and it's not just right to know. I do know that when we get into right to know things, that it goes to the attorney's office and somebody has to handle it. And I can tell you that the three other attorneys don't have the time to handle that based on the amount that's coming in. So at this point in time, I would not favor reducing that position at all. They have needed another attorney for a long, long time, and it's never been in the budget. Now we have one that's already in place, and this motion would basically fire that person, and I am not going to support that. Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all the comments and the feedback. Just for the record, I disagree. We can talk to, like, this is our job, controlling this budget. So if that means things get reduced, that's what happens. I'm not saying that's what I love or I want that, but, so I'm not necessarily, that's not my litmus test. My litmus test is how much are the taxpayers paying, and that's it. That's my only real metric. Number two, when we had the log for the right to knows, I believe only the budget review committee received the stack of papers with the every right to know request log. On that, on the top sheet that was given to us, it explained what the packet was, what we got. But it also said the city treats every single question as a right to know, which that's not a right to know. If I ask a city employee a question, it's not a right to know. And so it's the right to know requests are being artificially inflated because just a simple question to a city employee is not a right to know. A right to know should be triggered when a citizen doesn't feel like they're getting access to what they need or a question answered, and so they use right to know to get that information. So also, I know that, I believe, and I could be incorrect, maybe I'm mistaken, I believe Attorney Bolton said that the right to know coordinator would not be doing right to knows full-time. They would be doing other legal services. Am I misunderstanding that? Or?
Taking some of the workload off of the other attorneys, which are out straight.
Okay.
Are we ready for a vote?
Mr. Chairman, since we have been joined via Zoom by Alderman Sullivan, he is a member of this committee. All future votes from henceforward need to be done by roll call.
Alderman Timmons, did you have something else?
That must have made my heart rate go up to 120 because that's what my watch is saying. So, okay, calm down.
All set?
All set.
All right, there are no other questions or concerns. We will call the motion on the floor, and it'll be by roll call. A yes vote is in agreement with the motion, and a no vote is against the motion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at Large Wilshire.
No.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
No.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
No.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien votes nay. Chairman Richard A. Dowd.
No.
Mr. Chairman, that's 5 nays, 2 yeas.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Any further motions?
No.
Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to the previous motion, I would like to motion that we remove or subtract, $6,000 from page 72, which is admin services, line item 51100. From wages full-time. The reason being is instead of having a paralegal position, which I believe is being added, I'd like to reduce that money from $60,000 to $52,000 to pay for a full-time person to do the scanning redactions for the Inception Technologies project.
Mr. Griffin, anything on that?
Just want to let you know that Director Kleiner is available by Zoom if you wanted an explanation of what that person was going to do.
Director Kleiner, would you like to make a comment on the motion?
Good evening. Good. If it pleases the board. So this position would assist in the redaction of the Inception Technologies and the DocuWare documents. I think that a little bit is unknown as to the brunt of the work that has been placed upon the divisions in the actual answering of the right to know requests. So here in Administrative Services Division, our requests, although we often confer with the right to know attorney, and that is a very needed position, the actual requests, the documents, the redaction, all of that is done here within this office. It has caused some great concern as to us being able to get other functions done properly. And it's really causing quite a constraint on the day-to-day operations within the division. So this position would assist with that and assist with the redaction of the DocuWare. It's a very, very needed position.
So I think the question was the reduction in the amount of salary, a paralegal versus someone else. Can you comment on the reduction? I think it was 6,000. Alderman Kathy.
And you know what? I may be mistaken in this amount. My notes may be incorrect, and I don't mind being corrected. But Ms. Kleiner, when you were here previously meeting with us, I believe you said the salary that you would need for just a person. I can't help you with notes on Apple Watch. Just a person who is covering the redaction only would be 52,000 ballpark in salary. Is that correct?
For us to get the redaction done in the amount of time that I specified, which I still want to be very careful, that was looking at over 2,000 hours. So it would still take 265 days at that salary. The problem is I feel that a position that would also help with the right to know requests and redaction would take a little bit more expertise, considering there is very formal writing and a lot of more legal type of work that's done by the right to know, someone that would be answering the right to know requests.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Motion's withdrawn. Any further motions? Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to cut $25,000 from line item 89722 on page 215, Court Street, ETF.
Could you explain?
Yeah, could you repeat it again? What
Sure,
page?
absolutely, yeah. I'd like to make a motion to cut $25,000 from line item.
What page are we?
Sorry. Page 215, which is interfund transfers, line item 89722, which is the 14 Court Street ETF.
And you want to take away the 50,000?
No, 25, cut it in half.
Cut it in half.
I could speak to that if, once you're, got your notes.
Family's writing, why don't you explain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've discussed, sort of round and round in the aldermanic chamber, this is, I'm sure, this is not a surprise to anyone. I don't love the idea of giving Court Street this amount of money. I would prefer a strategic plan be in place before a lot of monies are spent on that building. Not that I don't want to spend money on that building, not that I don't think that the building can and should be improved for a variety of reasons. I would much rather that there be a very specific, strategic, detailed plan before us, before I would be comfortable putting $50,000 into that fund.
Let me ask you a question. Where would the money come from for the strategic plan? They usually go about $50,000.
Well, if I know that they're gonna use this money for a strategic plan, that's different, but there's no restriction on that monies. So if I leave it in there and then they just go to use it for something else, then they're gonna have to come back to us and ask for another $50,000 for a strategic plan anyway. So I don't know if there's a way around that, if we can put contingencies on different things, but I'm open to suggestions.
I don't recall what the $50,000 was allocated for, Mr. Griffin?
So by way of clarity, as part of the capital improvements, the city, the mayor is proposing $50,000 for a strategic plan. The $50,000 that we speak of that's going to the Expendable Trust Fund, Director Kleiner and I analyzed the revenue that goes into the fund and rounded off to 50. There might be a little bit of misunderstanding, but that expendable trust fund, you don't use an expendable trust fund generally for ongoing operations. So Director Kleiner can be a little bit more specific, but the electricity, the gas, things like that's in the city buildings operational accounts that's overseen by Director Kleiner.
Ms. Kleiner, do you want to add anything?
Yes, good evening, Director Kleiner. I would like to add that one of the things that we heard very clearly, I think, from our meetings and from the discussions was the need of a strategic plan. We have been meeting and interviewing and talking to people that would assist with that type of endeavor. And we do intend on bringing forth a plan that is not only meets the needs of those who use the building, but also meets the needs of possible tenants or other uses of the building. So we have heard that and we understand the need for that plan.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Director Kleiner, Mr. Griffin mentioned what kind of things that the funds are used for. Can you be more specific, just so I have more clarity before I decide what I want to do with this motion?
Certainly. So CFO Griffin is absolutely right. The everyday costs for that building are in the city buildings budget. They would not be used for that. It could be used for looking at funding the plan. It could be used for working and making some of the recommendations of that plan. But it would not be used for the day-to-day operations or any basic repairs. There is right now a group over there that is working to assess the building. And there are some repairs that are just being made out of extra money that we have in this fiscal 22 budget. We hope to get it set so that at least the artists that need to use it this summer can use it and we can fix some small items that have come to light. But it would not be used for any day-to-day maintenance.
So, if I may, that monies would be used to improve the building, for lack of a better explanation? Okay, then I'm gonna let the motion stand because like I said, I'd prefer a strategic plan before we start spending monies improving the building, so.
All right, the motion before us is to reduce that line item for Fort Street by 25,000. Alderman Kelly? Alderman Kelly?
I'm not gonna support this motion. We talked a lot about this building and what it needed, and this $50,000 in the grand scheme of this budget is not a lot of money, and I will remind everyone in the chamber, we just approved $275,000 for something. So I'm
Okay.
comfortable that we
Alderman
have
Sullivan
enough
first.
in place.
Okay. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Support this motion because I'm looking right now through my budget book and I'm counting the number of trust funds dedicated to down buildings. All of them are in six figures. If there's money that we need to take from one trust fund for another downtown building, so I support this motion to cut this appropriation in half.
Other comments, Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, I am not gonna support this. I look at 14 Court Street as one of the gems of the city. It is used by youth groups, whether they be the theater or dance halls or other things, which is part indirectly of our recreational and part of our enhancement of the community. Hey, listen, folks, I'm all in favor of burning the pool table on the December cold night, but it ain't that cold yet. And I'm not willing to give up 14 Court Street for a measly small amount of money. There's a lot of issues with that building. And why is that? Because, again, it's a building that is old. It needs every dollar that we can try to muster into it to keep it habitable, to be used as a community asset. So I think it is cutting off our nose to save our face by cutting this particular thing. Let's keep it as an asset to the city and fund it with the $50,000 that is currently in the budget. Thank you.
Any other comments on this motion? Alderman Como?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick statement. This trust fund's relatively new, if I'm not mistaken. We just created this probably about a month or so ago. And I recall during the discussions, there were several among us that had some concerns about the creation of this trust fund, and we were told, well, don't worry about creating the trust fund because all it does is establish the account. It doesn't appropriate money into it. And I think that, at least for myself, I won't speak for anybody else, I felt like it was a foregone conclusion that once we created this trust fund, we were going to appropriate money into it. So it seemed like a disingenuous argument at the time to say, we can create the account because we're not putting any money into it. And now here we are a month later appropriating money into it. My understanding was that that fund was supposed to be filled with, the money that we collect from tenants and rent and things like that to be used for building improvements and things like that. So has the intent of that fund changed since we created it? Because I thought that the purpose of it was to hold the money that we take in from the property, and we weren't going to need to appropriate funds into it.
I don't believe, Mr. Griffin, you can answer, I don't believe that the budget puts 50,000 in that account. I think it would have to be appropriated under separate legislation. So I'm not sure where the 50 came from per se, but it's not this budget that's putting 50K into that account, correct?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer Tax Collector. Good question. Ms. Kleiner and I, we recognize that there's about $50,000 of rent and taxes that is in the fiscal 23 budget that, for purposes, as you suggested, making sure the building's safe and fixed, not for operating expenses. So that's what's being appropriated. It's taking revenue and appropriating it. Now, you could argue last year you had revenue and no appropriations, so it is an increase. But it's revenue neutral from the standpoint of if you're gonna put money in from this particular purpose, we're just identifying the revenue, and that's why it's 50,000 and not 100,000. There was a notion that we take in 100, and that's not the case.
So the funds that are going in there are from rent and other things associated with revenue for the building,
Right, rent and taxes.
rent and taxes.
So
There's a
it's-
couple of rents, and Ms. Kleiner can get to the specifics, but there's a few rental revenue amounts that go in there, that can go in there.
Alderman Jenny?
So, I thank Alderman Como for reminding me of the conversation. So the fact that this 50,000, which will come from the rent and the taxes, goes into this fund, but I remember you saying very specifically that none of it could be spent until there was a resolution authorizing the expenditure of any of that money. Is that still the case? Is that?
Who's the spending authority on that?
I believe it's administrative services.
So if it's administrative services, it would be Ms. Kleiner that would be authorizing the expenditure. I think the discussion that we had on the account when it was set up was that from the rent and taxes, the people that are renting space there and paying taxes have some reasonable expectations of us keeping up the area in that building. And I think the resolution was that you know, monies would be added to this as we go along from rent and taxes, so that there is an amount of money that can help in maintaining the building, not normal expenses, but maintaining the building. So I think within the confines of the legislation that we set up, I think the appropriation is legitimate. So, but the motion's on the floor. Alderman Como?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So in layman's terms, I thought this was, we were adding an additional $50,000 on top of it. This is more like a transfer of the money we've already taken in and just putting it in that account. Is that correct?
Mr. Griffin, I believe it's the rent and taxes for FY '23 that go in there, correct? Or is it 22?
Correct. Couple of things. The mayor and the administrative services director are the agents to expend, so they need to authorize to spend. And it is a match of the fiscal '23 revenue to this amount to put it in there. You need an appropriation. You can't, the concept is you appropriate 50, but you know there's 50 coming in revenue.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so I have a distinct memory of I don't know, I think it was said, maybe I just thought it, but I think it was that this was described as just an accounting line item that we were creating, and that any money that would be going into it would be a decision that the alderman would have to make at a later time. And certainly that we wouldn't spend anything without specific authorization from the alderman, whether it's the full board of aldermen or the finance committee. So, hearing that, that in fact, 50,000 is gonna go in this thing and that it can be spent without further authorization is contrary to the discussion as I remember it when we created this. So,
Well, the legislation had to be very specific relative to who could expend it. And if it's the mayor and the administrative services director, that was what was in the legislation as far as the expending authority. Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, one final point. It was a long discussion that we had, good discussion, but the thought here is that, as Director Kleiner said, we're not gonna be paying electricity and gas and those types of things. And everybody was excited about putting 50 in or some amount and having it grow to cover things that are larger in nature, and that the thought might have been at the time, it goes to the finance committee for approval, contract over 25,000. But the building is an old building and it might need a new closet or something, so that could be less than 25. But there is, on page 308, second line from the top, it basically describes Fund 7022 and what the intent is, because we always put that in. And as Alderman Dowd indicated, that we have to put in the resolution who is going to be the agent to expend.
Okay. I have Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By way of report that was sent out, I believe it was in January, I have the last 3 years for 14 Court Street revenues. Fiscal year 20 actual 31,225, fiscal year 21 actual 16,750, fiscal 22 budgeted at the time that we obviously had many months to go, but it budgeted was 40,625. That's for rent. It's the last 4 years. So if this was meant to capture revenue from rents, 50,000 over a 3-year term, I think would be very generous.
I think it was rent and taxes, not just rent. Correct, Mr. Griffin?
Correct.
All said, Alderman Sullivan?
Yep.
And I have, Ms. Kleiner, did you want to add something at this point?
Yes, I would only like to add that the numbers that were quoted, number one, were reduced due to COVID, and no rentals were really taking place, considering that Court Street was closed for quite a period of time. It did include taxes, and the discussion was that any expenditure from this fund would be for an item that would be in excess of $25,000, therefore brought forth to the Finance Committee. We are not looking to use this for small items. We are looking to obtain a strategic plan and figure out the best use for these funds, and then bring that forward to the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot here to unpack. Thank you to Ms. Kleiner, who just kind of said a couple of things I wanted to say about COVID. Why would we look at the numbers during COVID? That just doesn't make any sense. For one. Two, there was an attack on downtown earlier about how we're always looking at downtown buildings. The problem is the downtown buildings are some of our oldest. So yes, we're going to look at those. And I guess we don't have a lot of city buildings in the south end or in the north end, or I shouldn't say north end, I should say west end, as much as we do downtown and as old as they are. So I think it is important that we're spending money on these things. And to say that I guess it's all of us that voted for it, I disingenuous with, is we weren't putting that money in. This money is what we believe the appropriation will be for next year, and I believe we will still have to vote on it at some point. Then the money, again, is not going in there the minute this budget gets approved. At some point, we were going to ask to put money in there. Somebody was. So it's not disingenuous, and to call all that is just wrong. That's all I got to say.
Okay, any other comments on the motion on the floor? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So I'm looking at the resolution, and it says, it is the intention of this board to make annual appropriations into this trust fund beginning with the FY 2023 budget, and that the annual amount that will be appropriated will be equivalent to the amount of any rent, taxes, and fees collected by the city relative to the use of the building. And the mayor or the administrative services director is appointed as the agent to expend. So, that clarifies in my mind, that when we talked about, that there would be no money going into this unless the alderman authorized it. And I guess that's what we're doing with this budget. This is the authorization to put money into it, and the money is supposedly matching, what the rent and taxes and fees relative to the use of the building. So I'm okay with this now that I've reminded myself.
All right, thank you. If there are no other comments, the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman at-large Laurie Wilshire.
No.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman at-large Shoshana Kelly.
No.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
No.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman at-large Michael O'Brien votes nay. Our chairman, Richard A. Dow.
No.
Mr. Chairman, that's 5 nays, 2 yeas.
Motion fails. Any other motions? Alderman Cathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to reduce, or actually, you want the page first, Mr. Clerk? Was that more helpful?
Do you have a sheet of what you got there? So
I
can
do, I just don't know what order to put it
It would
in.
expedite it.
Okay. All right,
Page number first would probably help.
page number 245.
245.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the amount of $500,000 on line item 81100 to $250,000.
What is that line?
It is capital improvements for the PEG Access Channel Fund. I can speak to it once we.
I think you get your numbers wrong. You said 811?
81100, capital outlay improvement.
Unless my glasses are failing me, I have PEG, it is 2505, Access Channel Supplies and Materials, and under, it's 61100.
No, no,
That's it.
go to 81, 2 sections down.
Okay, so you're down into the capital improvements.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The reason that I'm making this motion is, as you can see, the actual through April of this year was only 58,000. And so I feel like half to 250 is a safe place to be. I'm not cutting it entirely, but I feel like there's some room there. And so I'd like to cut a little fat off the meat.
Mr. Griffin, you want to cover that one?
Yes, if I may, let me see if I can do justice to this one. This is a special revenue fund where the revenue equals the expenses. So there's a couple of line items I'd like to bring up. One is in the revenues, 48990, use of fund balance. I'm sorry, that's page 244.
Okay, and what line item?
So line item 4, so this is all, the intent of this is the balance. 48990, use of fund balance, 507, 678. Might have to upgrade the specs. And then if we look at the next page, which is the one that Alderman Cathy is addressing, he'd like to cut the 500,000 down because they only spent 58.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a fund that doesn't lapse to surplus. This is the PEG Access Channel Fund. And those numbers are essentially placeholders based on the fund balance. So I'm gonna get you better explanation, but if you reduce the 500, you end up having to reduce the 507 use of fund balance. The reason why only 58 is expended is that's all they needed. Even though there's a number of 500.
So if they don't spend, let's say this budget passes as is, right? And the revenues are accurate, so they're gonna make $983,000 this year. That's our estimation. And we're budgeting, we'll spend 500 on capital improvements.
Right.
But we don't. What happens to that revenue that we're not spending? Because you said the revenue doesn't lapse over. So what does happen to that surplus revenue that we have in this particular fund?
It stays in this particular fund, stays in Fund 2505.
And just carries over year?
Yes.
Um,
So one more point.
Okay.
Really, the only revenue that comes in here is the cable TV franchise fees. There's a little
Right.
bit of miscellaneous revenue, so over the years, this has accumulated. And I believe the capital improvements is just kind of maybe that's the plug number, I'm not, but I'll find out, but at this point, if I haven't given you a good answer, I'm gonna get one. But this is a special revenue fund, revenues equal expenses, no effect on the taxes.
all right, I'll withdraw.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin, I appreciate it.
You're
Are
welcome.
there any other motions?
No, just kidding.
Seeing none,
I have
Alderman
one.
O'Brien has a.
Thank you, yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes.
Sorry to
Mr. Griffin.
interrupt.
You want to give us a point of where we are right now?
Well, I'm going to do that, but I also want to recommend if you would make a motion for me. Upon final analysis of this budget, and as you can imagine, it's very hectic, you try to tie things out as best you can. The comptroller and I noticed that in wastewater, on page 231, the revenue doesn't equal the expenses. We had added some expenses at the end of the process. So what I'd like to do is, on page 231, recommend 231, line item 48996, add 41,772 to that number, which is going to have the result of the revenues equaling the expenses, which it should do in this particular enterprise fund.
So basically, that motion will balance out revenues
Correct.
and expenditures.
What number was that?
So it's 48996, recommending on page 231 to add 41,772.
Okay, Mr. Griffin, I will make that motion.
Okay.
So I don't know, Rose is
And,
on.
Can you give me
Miss
the
Evans-
particulars
Miss
again?
Evans-
Rose is on.
Miss Evans is on, so she might be correcting.
Evans, you want to add something?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, let him make the
Yeah.
motion first.
yeah, okay. So your motion is the motion should be to,
If I can, it's kind of technical, but it's to increase
okay.
the
increase.
wastewater net asset number on
Increase.
account 48996, increase it by 41,772.
Okay, so increase line 48996,
Correct.
which is increase decrease. Please bear with me. Okay, to increase from 227,639
Oh, I need to add that up for you. Hold on. Yep.
It's 2694 and one number.
to what amount?
Let me get that for you.
2694 one number.
Oh, you have that one?
Yeah. 2694 one number. Adding
Yeah, 269411, that's the number that will go in there.
Okay,
269411 is the, is the result.
269,411.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So I have it, Mr. Griffin, motion by myself to increase line 48996, increase decrease in wastewater net assets from $227,639 to $269,411.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Don't forget your
Alderman
page number.
Kathy? What?
Page number.
And yes, this is on page 231.
Yeah, he's looking at the page, so we shouldn't miss that one.
I was looking on my.
Just want to make sure it's on the motion for the transcriptionist.
Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Griffin, I may be misunderstanding this, but I see on the revenue page 231, a total amount underneath the other financial services line. I see a total of 8599070. Are you saying that line is supposed to match the expenses on page 235 of 8,371,431, or are you trying to match up a different line? I'm just trying to get some clarity.
We're trying to match the total revenue line.
Of 27,000,006?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. That 27,006 should be 27,046,696, so they'll balance. But by changing that line, the math will work.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure I had the right line.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Any other comments, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so we just changed that number? This kind of reminds me of when I used to do my taxes for myself. Is that, we just make this number up? Is that what we're doing? Or?
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Griffin?
that's the balancing line for the revenue to equal the expenses. Like, I wouldn't recommend changing any other lines above that. So we have net assets in the wastewater fund, enterprise fund. And we either, that's why the line says increase or decrease, because sometimes the revenues above would exceed the expenditures, the appropriations. So in this case, we added expenditures, so we have to add to the use of fund balance. Wastewater net assets.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman
It's kind
Kathy?
of like,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, these are estimates, because my question would be, what if those revenues don't actually match up?
that's a good question. These are all estimates.
Okay. So what would happen if they don't match
So
up?
there's a closing, every June 30th of every year, this gets closed as its own accounting, it's its own funds, and if we use more, we're gonna have less of a fund balance, if we, a net asset position, or if we use less, we'll have a higher net asset position.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody familiar with the motion, or do you want it reread? Looks like everybody's familiar with it. Then the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman at Large Larry Wiltshire.
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien votes yes. Chairman Richard A. Dow.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, we've corrected that. I didn't see any additional motions, so Alderman O'Brien has a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage to the full Board of Aldermen of R22-035 relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget for the City of Nashua, General Enterprise, Special Revenue, and Grant Funds.
I would say as amended by the action of the board this evening.
So included.
Any questions, Alderwoman Kelly?
I was just going to ask CFO Griffin if he was keeping a tally of where we ended up with the amendments.
He
Yes,
beat me to the punch, because I asked him a couple of minutes ago. Before we voted on it, he was going to tell us.
So the operating budget, general fund, will be increased by $360,000. That includes $25,000 to the Great American Downtown, $25,000 reduction from transfer it to downtown improvements, $275 transfer it to the park rehabilitation, $75,000 reduction to the downtown improvements, and $160,000 increase transfer it to, or actually capital improvements, specifically for school deferred maintenance. So that calculates the net of $360. So the budget recommended to increase to $303,358,903.
I'm sure that he didn't write that fast.
No, I did not.
Watch it over, he's up to the first number.
The last number was 303,358,903.
Okay, so what is it? Okay.
All right, so does everybody understand what the motion is? Kathy?
I do understand the motion, I just want a clarification, maybe I missed a line item, because I've been tallying. We have 275 for the lights, and then we have 160 for the deferred maintenance. But the 25 is coming out of downtown improvements to go to GAD, so what are the other things that we added? Because on the wastewater fund, that balances out, so we're not actually adding that, right? Because it
Correct.
washes.
No change on the wastewater fund, but we do have 25 add to the GAD.
But that comes out of downtown improvements.
Right, and you did that by reducing the downtown improvements by 25, so that's a wash.
Right.
Then you added 275, subtracted 75, the remaining 75 to downtown improvements, and added 160, so the total is 360.
Okay, I thought you said something else.
Okay, no, that's fine, yep.
All set? Everybody understands?
Mm-hmm.
All right, then the motion is to recommend final passage of the budget here it is, R-22-035 to the full Board of Aldermen with the amendments as made this evening, with the recommended amendments made this evening. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan,
No.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy,
No.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien votes yes. Our chairman, Richard A. Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, motion passes. So, the next, when is the full board meeting? 28th? 28th, this will come up. We do have another budget meeting because we have a couple other items on it. One I know for sure is adding the monies for the fire department, and there's one other, but we will have that other budget meeting, only for the regular budget stuff. And then the motion, the budget for FY 23 will come up at the next full Board of Aldermen meeting, in which case it will be voted on, and I believe it'll be a roll call vote. Okay, so,
Alderman Dowd?
yes?
When you were talking about the budget meeting, are you talking about the wrap-up that we had held, or are you talking about
No,
something
there's
else?
no more wrap-ups, we just sent it to the full board.
I know, but you said we are still gonna have that budget meeting.
We
which is
have
what
a
was
budget
confusing.
meeting to address 2 items of legislation.
Separate.
When?
I don't know
Sorry,
where to put
you
that
just confused
particular
me.
piece of paper, but there's 2 items on it. One is to, one of them is the shortfall for the fire department that we talked about. That would come up at that budget meeting, which is, when is it? Next Monday, I think. Yeah, it is next Monday. And there's one other piece of legislation, and those are the 2 items that we'll be discussing at that budget meeting.
Our normally scheduled budget meeting. Got it, thank you.
So,
That's all I need.
general discussion?
So,
Alderman Jettie?
So adding money to the fire budget to cover a shortfall, that's gonna come after we vote on this budget?
No, it has nothing to do with this budget. It's this year. FY '22.
Oh, okay.
And the legislation explains why, unless Mr. Griffin wants to explain. It's because of COVID and the way we allowed them to take vacation after COVID. It's kind of complicated, but it came up at the first reading at the last Board Alderman meeting, and there were several people that signed on, so I assume everybody read the legislation. It's basically to give the fire department the money to resume, to do the rest of the year, basically. Correct, Mr. Griffin?
That's correct.
So your assumption is that the people who endorsed it read it, not necessarily those
I
who
would
didn't
hope.
endorse it.
I would hope.
I did.
Yeah, no, I know you did. Any other general discussion?
I do have one. Just to, my good friends on infrastructure, we're doing it again tomorrow night. We got the joint meeting at the Nashua North High School at, oh boy, 6 p.m.?
6:50.
6:15.
6:15, yeah.
Well, yeah, the joint is at 6:15. The infrastructure is at 6.
Yeah, we're at 6. This is a meeting on some stuff that we have that's pending out there with infrastructure. Some of it is the Garden Street in the example. I'll discuss it after the meeting. But it's going to be a regular infrastructure meeting. We're quickly going to go into the joint with DPW immediately following that. And then after that, Chairman Dowd kicks in with his joint special with the schools.
And all of this is happening at North?
North, yeah.
North.
So
be there or be square.
yes,
I'll be there.
Alderman Kelly?
I just wanted to remind everybody that Nashua Pride Festival is this Saturday, 2 p.m. for parade with festival to follow. Hope to see you all there.
Okay. Alderman Como?
Yes, I just wanted to thank all of the members of this committee for their work on the budget and for your support of my Levine Field project. It means a lot to me and the people in the neighborhood, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Alderman Sullivan, are you showing us your injury?
There it is. Right there, 4 stitches. Long story, great story, I'll tell you sometime. Anyway, I wanted to, this was a long process of the budget, 6 weeks or so. I learned a lot about city government. I learned a lot about this city government over the past 6 weeks. I am licking my chops for next year because now I have serious on-the-job training. And I'm looking forward to next year and digging in and seeing what we can do. So thank you.
I've been on the board 11 years, I'm still learning. I think we're all set there. Public comment? What?
Just quickly, the clerk would like to thank everybody for repeating and everything. Mr. Griffin, I would like to see you afterwards, just to make sure we have everything all set. But thank you. I am not as good as my clerk, Alderman Como, who
I disagree.
the night of the 1,000 barriers
twice
debate.
the clerk I am.
You know, but I tried to match you in comparison. Thank you.
Alderman, yes, Alderman Clee.
Thank you. Are you going to be having Alderman remarks? Because I can wait for them at the end.
Yeah, we're gonna have
After public
aldermanic
comment?
remarks after public
Okay,
comment.
I'll wait then. Thank you so much.
And there's no one in the audience for public comment here. Anyone for public? What?
Yep, online.
Yes. Somebody named Right to Know.
Yeah, who's?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. A couple of things. I shared a little bit of a story last night, living over in Litchfield and attending deliberative sessions and how sessions worked in a small town of 7,000 with a budget of about $13 million. And the public would get together. There was usually quite a lot of interest, fill a school auditorium. And the process of deliberating, discussing, and asking questions about a budget went from, 9 in the morning until 3, 4, sometimes 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And you had a wide variety of people at the microphone, long lines, in fact. It wasn't the same people up talking, and very often, if you had a list of questions, somebody else was asking your question or getting an answer, which helped you in understanding and getting the information you were looking for. When you go to a Nashua budget hearing and there's only really 4 or 5 people that are participating in it, I thought that the chairman showed an extreme amount of frustration and disrespect to the citizens who showed up because we kept coming to the mic, and he didn't appreciate it. He changed the rules repeatedly, which I think was in violation of how a public hearing is to be done, and I drafted a letter to the Attorney General's office today to have a discussion with the state about what's happening down here and our hearings. You know, it was just so disrespectful and attacking to have a chair say, you've come to other meetings, you know, we're sick of you, we're tired of you being around, you've already asked questions, we don't want to hear from you anymore. Most of the public comments at meetings are just only public comments and not questions to be answered. The hearing was the one place I could come. And to be shut down for addressing the spending cap, when in fact Alderman Dowd at a budget public meeting stated the spending cap could be discussed at the hearing, was just really discouraging. So this city and the leadership of this city, the old guard, needs to go. It certainly doesn't respect participatory government. The document that Jonathan Cathy referenced, a large stack of right-to-knows tabulated with the cover sheet that explained how the city treats
30 seconds.
I would like a copy of that document as a formal right-to-know request publicly. I want that because I think that's what the mayor was referring to. And as a person who seems to take a lot of criticisms, I actually don't have that record. I'd like to see it. I'd like to study it. And I agree with Jonathan Cathy. This is abusing what a right-to-know request is. Thank you. And thank you for the work done by the committee tonight.
Just so you know, a lot of what was just said was not true, and you take it for a grain of salt. We're in public comment, Alderman Tebow. You want to wait for remarks by Alderman?
Yeah, I do want to wait. I just put it up so you'd see it.
All right, there's no more public who want to be spoke. Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I'd rather. So I wasn't going to speak, but I just want to commend you last night for doing a great job. I know the whole thing, I couldn't be there, but I did watch it, and I thought you did a great job. I thought people weren't respecting the rules, but you go up there and you make statements and you make speeches. That's not what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be to ask questions. Ask questions. Ask it on what we're going over. If we're going over police, ask questions about police, not the spending cap. And so I think those comments were just what Alderman Dowd said. They just weren't true. And I watched it last year, and I saw the same exact thing. I was actually there last year. I saw the same exact thing, and it's the same people doing the same thing. And I wish more people came out. I wish people came out to ask questions that they want to know more about. We had all budget meetings that people could come to, learn about certain departments, learn about budgets. I would love to see the room filled up every single meeting. But for some reason, there's too much apathy out there and people don't come to see. But there's so much to learn, and there's a lot to learn. And I think, Alderman Depp did a fantastic job last night, and so did the mayor. And I just want to say to Alderwoman at large, Kelly, I'm hoping to be at that parade on Saturday. Hopefully, this cold or whatever will clear up and I can be there. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for mentioning it again. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Tebow. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too will be at the Pride Parade, and thank you so much for, I saw your interview on TV, you did a phenomenal job, thank you. But I actually want to give thanks. I want to give thanks to the Nashua PD and all the citizens that worked so hard in finding Timothy. It was very scary for his family today, and he was found safely, and I think the Nashua PD and citizens, I heard from my constituents that were out looking for him. Somebody saw him at 11 a.m. There were people that were looking over by the library downtown in Little sorry, Little Florida, I'm losing my
Wrong
mind, in
direction.
French Hill, Canada, yeah. So,
Canada,
over
Florida.
at, Little Florida and so on. So I heard from so many people, and I think it was wonderful that they helped find him. And thank goodness he was reunited with his family and he was safe. I'd also like to thank, Mr. Griffin and Attorney Bolton and Chairman Dowd. You guys have done a phenomenal job, and I've already sent it in writing, but I wanted to apologize to Mr. Griffin in public, as well as Attorney Bolton. They sat here trying to explain everything a few meetings back, and they took a lot of abuse. And normally, I stand up and I say that this is not fair to them. They work very hard, and we all appreciate everything that you do, as well as Attorney Bolton. So I want to go on the public record of saying thank you very much for everything you do. I don't think you should have to take the abuse. I don't think any employee should have to take the abuse that you did that night. So I apologize for not standing up that night. Thank you so much.
Any other Alderman? Oh, Alderman Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the public last night made a comment, geez, more people should be there from the public. I agree. We saw the same 5 people, although they were very interesting. But I've always said, what about the silent majority? And that means the other 96,995 that stayed home. And what about that thing that I see that the mayor talked about last night? That, again, Nashua made it by one of the organizations as the 4th best city to live in New Hampshire. I mean, I remember in '87, Making Money magazine. We've done it twice, and now we've done it with this group, and we've always been high. Mr. Chairman, I've been with you 6 years on this. I relish at your knowledge of the municipal budget. I was been your clerk for 6 years, you know, still learning myself. But I think
Of course, it's shorthand.
yeah. Well, no, Irish have long hands. You know, nothing short with an Irishman. But I think it reflects not only us as aldermen, but it reflects our city employees. You just don't get recognized by these organizations just by chance, you know. So I think we're on the right track. I wish, you know, some people would realize that. Welcome aboard. This is the community. But I think we've got it focused on exactly what we're doing, prudently. And the fact that we're all here living here means we've got a pretty darn good place to bring up a family and everything. So I'm not going to sit here and say Chicken Little yet, and I'll wait to burn the pool table. Thank you.
Any other comment? Alderman Coleman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to tell my colleague from Ward 9, I recommend frozen peas for the swelling, single malt scotch for the pain, and lessons for the golf swing.
Also, Alderman Como, he should keep his head down. They tell you that all the time.
That's right.
You need to have a concussion instead of an eye coat.
Not fair.
Men well, my friend, men well.
At least you didn't get hit by a Frisbee on the other golf course.
No
All right.
comment.
Any other comments? All right, appreciate everybody's work during the budget. It's always a difficult procedure. I've been doing this for, I don't know how many years, between that and budget director of the Board of Ed for a number of years. It's not an easy job. It's, and I do have a few other things that keep me busy during the day. In fact, I swear to God, I talk to more of the division directors every day than the mayor does probably. So there's a lot of things going on with our buildings and schools, and I do find it challenging, but I also found it very rewarding. I don't mind spending the time making sure that things are done right. And while I definitely wish that we could lower the tax rate as low as absolutely possible, we will get some chances in September. And it always seems like something in the year forces us in a challenge. At least we've solved the insurance problem, and our unions have stood up and saved us a lot of money. We've conquered some of the other issues that we've had with, at least this year, we're getting some money from the state for a 1-year hit We don't know when, where, or how. So when it gets here, it'll be good. And I also hope that everything goes well at the final budget meeting, final aldermanic meeting for the budget, so. Thank you very much, and I think the items we passed tonight are extremely important. Thanks. Bye. So, Alderman O'Brien,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
by roll call.
And yes, it has to be by roll call.
Call the
All
roll.
right, I will call the roll. Alderman at-large Laurie Wiltshire.
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderwoman Elijah Shauna Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman at-large Michael O'Brien votes yea. Chairman Richard A. Dowd.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
we're adjourned at 10 o'clock.